Good evening, everybody. It's Wednesday, November 16th at approximately 7 p.m. and this is the regular scheduled meeting of the school committee, and it is great to see everybody here. The first thing on our agenda is public participation. Would anybody like to address the committee? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm Chris Mars, President of Wareham Education Association. And
could you have a step forward? Could you step
Would
forward?
you come and
Actually, I hope that mic is on. Christian, is that mic
on.
good to go?
Her, but she needs to speak into it, otherwise people at home won't hear.
They'll hear me.
thank you.
Better?
Thank you.
Again, Christine Mars, President of Wareham Education Association. As President of the Wareham Education Association, I come to you tonight to request the reinstatement of social studies at Wareham Middle School. I would also request the district consider reinstating programs that have been cut or reduced at middle school that address the needs of all of our students. The dissolution of social studies has resulted in multiple problems for students and teachers. These problems will continue to resonate through our students' educational programs throughout their years in Wareham. Students will not be prepared for high school social studies. Thus, they will be limited in their access for future studies. Students will be deprived of an ability to connect history to their world. This is detrimental to Wareham students as members of a world community. Teachers are experiencing larger class sizes as a result of the current attempt to have them teach critical thinking worldview. Math, ELA, and science teachers are being required to teach a course for which they are not licensed, and they can no longer fully devote their efforts to improving our Level 3 status. We cannot accept more reductions to our educational programs. It's time to fully support education and make a stand for quality education. Thank you.
Thank you. If anybody else wants to speak, you're welcome to, but before I ask again for speakers, I want everybody to know that public participation is an opportunity for us to listen. The lack of a response from the committee should not be construed to mean that we don't take seriously the comments that are made. In particular, when we get a comment from a teacher who is a department head and also the president of the Teachers Association, we take it very seriously, and we appreciate Chris being here, and of course everybody else. Does anybody else like to?
In the back.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Wallace. I'm a proud Wareham Middle School 7th grade teacher. I'm sure you know this has been a really emotional year for us as a staff and as a student population. But besides the emotional issues that have come with the dissolving of an entire department at my school, there's some financial issues that I find to be particularly concerning. Just so you're aware, 9 positions were cut from our building in an attempt to balance the budget. It wasn't pretty, but it was something that they thought had to be done. But the costs of this alternative critical thinking worldview program seem to keep going and going and going, and I'm not seeing the benefit to my students going up in the same way. Over 20 staff are being paid after school to attend a class that possibly could result in getting certification in humanities, but that's unsure. Consultants and instructors are being flown in from all over the country to teach this class. Other staff will be paid as mentors to these teachers to further train them. The cost of licensing these additional teachers in humanities is going to keep growing. The cost of paying for teachers to take the humanities examination is another cost that's going to keep growing. What happens if some of us don't pass the first time around? Are you going to keep paying for that? Again, the cost of licensing and renewing, what happens if we get a new hire? Are they going to be paid for in the same way? And that's just the money that we're currently spending to maintain this program. That doesn't even begin to address the money that could be delayed coming to us from various grants. Last year, money was delayed to us because a handful of teachers were teaching subjects outside their content area. Today, the majority of our faculty is teaching a subject outside their content area. So I doubt that the money situation in that terms is going to get any easier. So as a teacher, obviously, there are all kinds of issues I feel strongly about in terms of the quality of education and the experience this is giving our students. But as a Wareham taxpayer, I'm outraged that my money is going towards this ill-planned and ill-executed program where the student benefits are not being realized and the students are the ones who are suffering. And we have this program and we're not sure of our end goals, we're not sure if all the kinks have been worked out, and we just keep spending and spending and spending when this was supposed to be a measure to save money. Doesn't seem to be adding up very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to the committee? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Ronnie Oliver. I'm a middle school health teacher, and I've been teaching over 20 years. We'll stop at that. I feel that the curriculum at Wareham Middle School should promote intellectual curiosity, creative thinking, and challenge the students to reach their full potential. However, how can the students of Wareham Middle School obtain these goals as things continue to be cut? It started with the loss of woodworking, cooking, and has continued with cuts in foreign language, art, music, and technology. Now that social studies is no longer a part of the curriculum at Wareham Middle School, how can the students of Wareham Middle School reach these goals? How can the students of Wareham Middle School reach high levels of achievement through a curriculum which must include social studies? So that the students here at Wareham Middle School can meet their academic full potential, we ask you please bring back social studies. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Jen Cromaldi. This is my 5th year at Wareham Middle School. For 180 days as teachers, we stand before our future leaders.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure you're going to be heard. Could you perhaps get closer to the mic or sit or hold it up to your...
Here, I'll sit.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you want me to start from the beginning?
Please.
Okay. My name is Jen Cromaldi. This is my 5th year at Wareham Middle School. For 180 days as teachers, we stand before our future leaders. I know it comes as no surprise our test scores are lacking, not only in Wareham, but as a nation. As of 2010, our nation ranks 31st, 17th, and 23rd in math, reading, and science, respectively, in the world. At some point, it is anticipated that some sort of social studies test will return, but the decision to eliminate the social studies department has also created larger class sizes and lower quality learning experiences in math, ELA, science, which will further impact those scores. Wareham Middle School is a level 3 school with an immediate need for improvement in the core areas, and this is not how we get stronger. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Laura Pohl. I'm a teacher at the Minot Forest School as well as the parent of 2 middle school students. And I've noticed that the middle school years are a time when kids are asking lots of questions, and I think it's a really important time to give them that background and the cultural perspective that they need to be good citizens in this country and members of the world community, the global community. I worry also that if we can cut social studies, because there's no social studies on the MCAS, what happens if the state runs out of funds and they decide not to have a math MCAS? This is really important. This is basic education, and all of our kids should be getting it, in addition to everything everybody else mentioned with the increased class size and people teaching out of their certification areas. I think it's really unfortunate, and I hope we can bring the social studies department back.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deanna Semple. I'm a teacher at the elementary school, but I'm here tonight as a parent. As a teacher and as a parent, I believe in public schools. I believe in Wareham public schools. But I'm losing faith in the middle school. My son came through here. My daughter is in 8th grade here now. And we've lost sports programs. We've lost music. We've lost art. We've lost language. They have it a third of the year now, not a full year. And it's only in their 8th grade. and now social studies. Parents were in the dark about this. I only knew because I was involved in the school. I think many parents in town had no idea this was happening or going to happen. Maybe they don't even know it's happened. Not that you need our permission to cut something, but I think it's important that we should be involved in our children's education. The social studies teachers are eliminated. Critical thinking worldview takes its place, but teachers are not certified in that, and so they don't have a passion in that. And I think it's important. I want my child to have a teacher who's passionate about that subject.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Brian Fitzgerald. I am a 5th grade teacher, and until last year I was a middle school social studies teacher. And what I'm hearing puts me in mind of a great thinker, George Orwell, who said, "He who controls the present controls the past." We're here in the present wondering what type of access to the past our students are going to have. The children of Wareham aren't competing against someone around the corner for a job when they're an adult. They're competing with somebody around the world. How can they compete if they don't know about the past, the culture, the history of those people outside of Wareham, outside of the United States? The second part of what Orwell said is, "He who controls the past controls the future." We're denying the children of Wareham the access to the past that they will need to compete and succeed in the future, in the name of budgetary savings that may or may not be there, in the hopes that people who spent years being trained as math or English or science or other teachers can somehow give them that education. I'm here, and so many of us are here, because we care about the future of the children of Wareham. And given what is being done to close the past off of them, I worry deeply about that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm a student from the Wareham Middle School, and I would like to stress the need of why
Excuse me 1 second. Christian, can you hear this young lady? Thank you. Why don't you start over slowly?
I'm a student from the Wareham Middle School, and I would like to stress the need of why I'd like to have the social studies teachers back. My brother, he said that he used to learn a lot more in his social studies class than he's now learning in his critical thinking and worldview classes. I also think that if the teachers that have their other subjects now are teaching the social studies subjects as critical thinking and worldview, they can't focus on their main subjects and supporting the kids in that one subject. So that means that the grades in the MCAS might fall in the one subject because the kids have to be supported in 2 subjects by 1 teacher. And that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to address the committee? Take your time.
My name is Cynthia Bliss. I'm an ELA teacher at Wareham Middle School. This is my 17th year there. I've taught social studies. I do love the subject. I'm teaching critical thinking and worldview this year, and I like the part of that I'm teaching. But there is a ripple effect. When I lost my colleague Brian to budget cuts, we've lost a very fruitful collaboration between ELA and social studies on our team, where the kids worked together to do a research paper. They were doing informational reading and writing of a high quality. We were pushing them to formulate a thesis and back it up with evidence that we both checked. As their teacher of critical thinking, I simply don't have the time to put the rigorous attention to it that we could do collaboratively. And so the children are losing out on this. And the other problem is that the format of critical thinking it meets 4 days out of 6. The children are very aware of the fact that they don't meet for this class every day, and they have made qualitative judgments about the value of it. And it does come up. Because I love history, I have no problem defending what they're learning, but they're not always buying it. So I would urge you to please bring back social studies. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Sheila Furtado, and I've been a teacher here at Wareham Middle School for a very happy 26 years. The last 14 as a social studies teacher, the last 7 as the social studies curriculum leader. So when the information was given to me that social studies would be gone, it certainly struck a knife. Because really, as my colleagues have said, and that wonderful young student, it does make a difference. Social studies is connected to every aspect we learn. And the critical thinking comes from social studies. You have to teach what they need to do to be successful. And although we were told that the critical thinking would be a new and unique way to look at social studies, it just isn't feasible. And with great respect to my colleagues, to get a curriculum a day before they're supposed to teach it as effectively as social studies teachers who have had 15 years of experience is not fair to them, nor is it fair to the students. They were given a pile of resources and said go. So it really is important to bring it back so we can compete. There are too many people that are saying, why? So it is imperative that we bring the social studies program back. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Missy Dekas, and my confession is that I came tonight not really knowing what was on the agenda. I knew there was some social studies talk. I sit here, I listen. I'm not sure how I feel either way about it. I'm a parent of an 8th grader who is my second child. I have always been a proponent of the middle school. You hear so many people ask you, are you going to pull your kid out? Are you going to put them in a private school? I've always defended the middle school. This year, I kind of have a little sour taste in my mouth. Not because of one particular reason, not because social studies was removed. I see a decline in a lot of services for the kids. I think the thing that breaks my heart, and maybe other parents agree, is the Renaissance program being removed from the middle school. I'm fortunate that I have a son who is very involved in after-school activities elsewhere. He's on the Honor Society. If he weren't, there's nothing for him to do, nothing. There are no after-school programs. There's no sports. You've taken away Renaissance. Renaissance is something all kids can do, whether they are high academic achievers or low academic. I also think it might keep a few kids out of trouble. And it breaks my heart that not only have you taken away those, now you're taking away some of their basic educational programs. So I just wonder where it stops, and where do we as parents, and it's funny that I think parents always are criticized for not being involved, and then when we try to get involved, I sometimes don't feel like we're listened to. I know there are certain budgetary constraints that you have, but it just breaks my heart that I saw my son participate in the music program in the middle school after the first year. He didn't want to do it anymore. There wasn't enough time. If anyone's been to a high school football game, you'll notice that the band is a sad state of affairs. They have a great program, both of the elementary schools. You're losing them somewhere. So now you're losing them in the arts, you're losing them in their community service, and now you're going to start taking away their social studies. So maybe there is some common denominator here. I don't know. I don't know where the solution lies, but I think we need to take a good hard look at it. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jamie Pelletier, and I have a daughter here at the middle school in 8th grade. And I just want to state that I have seen the effects of the new critical thinking. My daughter has always been a straight A student. This year she has a C in critical thinking, has a B. I found that it was because she hasn't had as much time in that classroom, so she got one poor grade, and she hasn't had the ability to bring that up because they only meet 4 days instead of the 6. There's like a 6-day rotation. And I know she had spoken to her teacher about bringing it, is there some extra credit? But the teachers don't have time for that. They're too busy trying to teach 2 subjects now, and that's not her main focus. And I can totally respect that because that's not her area that she should be teaching. And I just think it's unfortunate that students are losing out on that because now their teachers are overloaded. And I just think that you should really consider bringing that program back. It's a huge benefit to our children.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the committee? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jonna Fredrickson, and I'm a parent of a middle school student and also of an elementary school student. But I'm mostly here as a professional. My field is theological education, and I teach religious studies. I was very concerned when I showed up for orientation and found out that we have math teachers and ELE teachers and other people teaching Islam. For one thing, because even as a theological educator, I would have some reservations about teaching about faith that I wouldn't be 100% certain that having done graduate work in. So there's that issue. But I think what bothered me most of all when I found out about this switching around was the understanding of critical thinking worldview is it is not just content. Critical thinking is a way of looking at the world, and it produces a certain kind of worldview. The problem is when you're dealing with middle school kids is they are not developmentally able to understand a critical thinking / worldview because they're not grown up enough to get there, which means that teachers have to provide a structure so that they understand the material presented. Because at this point in their development, it's not just content, it is how that content is presented, and it's the structure which supports the content. I am concerned that when you're throwing teachers in who haven't really had this as their major field of study, that you're asking them not only to learn content that they're not familiar with, but also an entire structure which they're not familiar with. And I think that's an awful lot to ask. And while my son Colin is in 8th grade, and he'll be fine. I'm not terribly worried about him at this point, missing 1 year of social studies, though I certainly would rather he not do that. The one that I am very worried about is my son Jared, who's a 4th grader. And for the first time in my life, I considered perhaps pulling a child out of public school and going the homeschooling route or going private school, which I really don't want to do. And I'm concerned about it. And I know that there are budgetary restrictions. I know that you're doing the absolute best you can, and thank you for doing that. But I did want to express my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to address the committee? First, let me say that I, once again, am very appreciative of everybody being here. I value the comments and I value the time that you've taken to be here. I do want to say 2 generic things, not because I don't want to respond to this off the cuff, but I was going to say something that, as a part of my report of the chair, that for reasons of commitment you may not be able to stay for. And that is, at the conference that I and others attended last week, we had a presentation from the Massachusetts Budget and Policy Center. It was all about school funding. Much to my surprise, I discovered that where we thought we were somewhat unique in Wareham, that we were funded essentially at minimum for quite a number of years, it now appears that approximately 1/3 of Massachusetts is now funded at minimum. The other thing you should know about the budget is there are basically 3 areas that have been impacted by the lack of funding. 2 of them have seen significant increases because there was no choice. That was the cost of health care and the cost of special education. Special education has been hurt because the reimbursement for special education has declined. For this year, it's come back somewhat, but for several years, it had been cut in half. It's a complicated formula. The bottom line is reimbursement for special education was dramatically reduced. So when you combine the cost, the mandated cost of special education, and by no means am I suggesting this is a bad investment. I'm just saying it's expensive. When you combine that cost with the cost of health insurance, you ended up with many communities across the Commonwealth having to make very difficult decisions. And what the data shows is that almost all, virtually all of the communities in the Commonwealth made the same decision, and that is they reduced the number of teachers. So while nobody on this committee and in this administration wants that to happen, it's happening across the Commonwealth. The other thing I'd like to tell you is there will be 3 meetings starting in January 12th, I believe.
School committee. Yep.
3 consecutive school committees starting in on January 12th that will be addressing the budget for next year. We would love to have you back for those meetings. One of those meetings is a public hearing where not only the school committee will be here, but the finance committee, as well as the Board of Selectmen, as well as the town administrator. So if you have time, I urge you to be present because that will have a significant impact on the decisions made for next year. And once again, I very much thank you for coming. Next on the agenda is good news.
Do you want to do the moment of silence first?
Yes, thank you. I would like to take a moment of silence. We had 2 long-term employees of the school district passed. One was Joan Wilson, a long-term secretary at the Deacon's School, and Kathy Murphy, who was a long-term teacher also at the Deacon's School. So if I could have a moment of silence for those 2 individuals. Thank you. And now for good news, Dr. Rabinovich.
Yes, I have a letter here from the town moderator, Claire Smith. Dear Mr. Palladino, several members of the high school chorus graciously accepted a request to sing the national anthem at the opening of town meeting. Please extend a sincere thank you to them from myself, the deputy moderator, all of the boards, committee and commission members, department heads and town administrator, and voters who were in attendance. Their performance was well received, and they most certainly should be very proud of themselves, as should the administration of Wareham High School. The students were a good example of what we can do within our schools. Upon arriving at the school prior to the meeting, the students went directly to the music room to rehearse, and when it was time for their performance, their maturity and professionalism shined like a brilliant star as they took their place on stage. Their rendition of the national anthem was wonderful, and again, my sincerest appreciation for allowing them to perform. I was given a list of names of those who would be participating. You might want to confirm with Mr. Shelter to be sure they were no additional students who might have substituted or participated. The names he gave me were the following. Also, please thank Mr. Chasson and the JROTC for their participation as well. It is truly an impressive beginning when we open the meeting with the presentation of the colors by the distinguished group of students. They do a fine job and make us proud to stand and salute the flag. My sincerest thanks and appreciation, Claire Smith, Town Moderator.
Thank you. Anything else?
Not for me.
Any other good news from the committee? Kenny, Cliff, Rhonda?
I have some good news.
Our student has good news.
Yeah.
Jessica? Yes.
The high school is having an open house tomorrow night for all parents from 6 to 8 o'clock. That's November 17th. And also, a couple of the clubs are holding a canned food drive and a Coke drive. And that will be held till around December 9th, so for a little while. And the advisories are having a competition between the canned food drives. So the advisory that brings in the most cans gets a ice cream party. A little bit of incentive.
Absolutely. Cliff?
I was going to bring it up on new business, but are we going to send out a Global Connect on the open house at the high school?
It was sent out tonight.
It was on it?
Mhm.
Good, good. I think it's very, very important for the teachers to touch base with for the parents to touch base with the teachers, and it gives them an opportunity to do that. I know it's only 2 hours, but I think it is important, so I highly recommend that all parents make an effort to go and speak to the teachers.
When was that again, Jessica?
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow
6
night.
o'clock?
6 to 8.
6 to 8. Kenny, any good news?
I'm all set.
Rhonda?
Yeah, I have a couple announcements. This weekend is the 5th annual DECA School Holiday Fair. It's on Saturday from 9 until 3. This is a fundraiser for the DECA Elementary. The arts and crafts will be sold. The event will also feature face painting, the mood walk, and pictures with Santa and raffles. So please come out and support DECA at the event this weekend. Also, the Coordinated Family and Community Engagement Council is proud to present Reading is Magic with Marcus the Magician from the Magic Company. It's going to be held tomorrow from 6 to 7 at the Hammond School. I'm almost positive. The Hammond and Minot schools are also doing their annual coat giveaway. If you do have coats for children, please drop them off at Hammond School. The other pieces are at the Wareham High School that they're hosting several different financial aid sessions for students that are interested in going to college, or for parents really struggling today with how they're going to pay for college. Please contact the high school, find out. There's 3 different events. Even if you have a freshman or sophomore, there's a lot of resources at the high school to help you start planning for your child going to college. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Minutes of October 26th. I'll take a motion to approve for discussion, if there is any.
So moved.
Second?
Cliff? No, you have to
can't.
second. They both weren't there.
We have to abstain,
Oh.
Mr. Chair.
I can second it for discussion.
Not really.
Yeah, you can.
I'll second it.
Oh, you second.
I'll second it. Okay, any discussion?
Just 2 things. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Underneath the section that talked about, no, I don't have it in front of me. It was a section where we were talking about the students, the alumni that were coming back, and we were sending a survey out to them, and there was a lack of participation. I know in the second column we talked about doing the survey again next year, that we were going to ask the Alumni Association to ask if they had any additional fields that they wanted to put into that survey. But in the first part, there was also a suggestion that the group that's responsible for that reach out to the Alumni Association to see if they can help with the response rate. So if we could just add that suggestion to... Can you put it in one sentence? What do you yes. What would you like to add? I would like to add the 2 people that presented were...
Stephen Goldman.
Yes, Stephen
And
Goldman.
Scott Palladino.
Yep. Reach out to the members of the High School Alumni Association to garner support for next year's survey for increased participation. Thank you.
Did you have something else?
That's it.
Anything else? Okay. All those in favor of the report as amended?
Aye.
Aye. And 2 abstentions? Yes. So that's 202. Reports of the committees. Rhonda?
Yes, we have 2 policies for the committee to approve tonight. One is the textbook selection and adoption. The major changes to this policy had to do with generalizing, instead of it just referring to textbooks, because there are online materials now. Across the board, we made a change moving it from textbooks to just text. We also added the explanation of that, which is in the second paragraph, second sentence. For the purpose of this policy, text will be defined as hardbound text as well as digital text, and that's the reason for the change throughout the rest of it. We also changed some of the bullet items underneath to, I think, reflect more with the what is being done at the state level. Cliff, do you remember the main reason for that? But it was a recommendation from I think, the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the 2 main changes in the textbook selection and adoption. Do you want me to move on to goals, or do you want to take them one at a time?
One at a time, please.
Okay.
Ken, Cliff, any questions on textbook?
No, I'm all set.
I move we adopt the textbook adoption policy as presented.
Second.
Second. Just a couple of things. I believe there's a typo in the second sentence after the italicized reference. Should be hard-bound. My copy. You see that, Michelle? And then on the 5th bullet, you say include online or digital access and support. So are you saying that we should refrain from buying textbooks where there isn't a digitized version available? Is that, in essence, what you're saying?
Yeah.
It says to be mindful of. It doesn't say it has to. It says be mindful of.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Anything else? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 400. Next policy?
Next policy is the goal statement. There were no changes made to the goal statement due to the fact that the goal statement is written from the 5-year strategic plan. There was discussion, taking a look at it, that there were suggestions on changes, but again, because this comes out of the 5-year strategic plan, we are going to go into another strategic planning next year. Then that's where really the changes come from. So the policy is exactly the same as it was before.
Then I will refrain from comments. And I
you.
guess we all should.
I move we accept as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain? Sorry. Against? Abstain? 400. Is that it?
Those are the only 2 policies. We did have the graduation requirements, but we had our policy review meeting last night and got those changes back. We have reviewed them, made additional suggestions. Those changes will be given to Michelle along with 2 other policies, and those will come to this group at the next school committee meeting.
Okay. Ken, Cliff, advisory reports?
We had a meeting of the curriculum advisory report committee or group, superintendent's advisory committee on curriculum
advisory committee.
Right, and there was some very, very healthy discussion about the social studies situation at the middle school, and I just wanted to point out that it was healthy, it was honest, and it was very interesting. So it's not something that's gone unnoticed, and it's not something that we're not talking about it at the superintendent's level.
Mr. Chair, we have a meeting tomorrow.
Yes.
For the budget, so I will report out next meeting.
Okay. Just so everybody knows, there are there are a number of advisory committees, and one of them is the budget, and the Budget Advisory Committee will begin meeting literally tomorrow. I would like to mention a few things under the chairman's report. I'd already mentioned that last week we had the Massachusetts Association of School Committee and Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents joint committee in Hyannis. This is an annual event designed to bring people together and hopefully cause best practices to be spread across the state. It was the first and most important aspect of it is the Wareham school system did a presentation, I think, for the first time to the Commonwealth. It was the result of 2 years of work. One of the people, two of the people that were part of that committee, as well as myself and Dr. Rabinovich, were part of the presentation. I not only had the presentation was all about teacher evaluation, and it was, of course, particularly meaningful because of the state regulations that have come about since this committee was formed. We've been working on it for months before the state decided to take a look at it. It was particularly gratifying for Wareham to be so well received with respect to this. I was not only had many people come up to me immediately after the presentation, but the next day I had people coming up to me wanting to talk to me about what we were doing, getting my contact information, and getting the contact information of the Wareham Education Association as well, because it was an absolutely joint effort, and we all felt like colleagues in a very difficult but worthwhile effort. So that was a great success. That same issue was presented to the delegate assembly of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, and the Wareham School Committee had previously passed it as a resolution, and this resolution was passed virtually unanimously by the Commonwealth's school committee members, which means that the work that we've been doing for the last 2 years is now something that the entire association will be advocating for throughout the state and within the legislature. Besides teacher evaluation and administrator evaluation, which is a combined effort by the state, one of the more interesting presentations that I went to, in addition to the one by the Mass Budget and Policy Center, which I already referred to, which was not so much interesting as depressing, there are some interesting legal cases that are bubbling up from a variety of states. The most interesting one had to do with a case involving a middle school. It turns out electronic social media is hitting the courts, and this one may end up in the Supreme Court. It's, in brief, the case involved someone creating a Facebook, well, the equivalent of a face. It was called MySpace back then. Court things take a long time to get through, but the equivalent of a Facebook page, for those of you who don't remember MySpace, it was created for the sole purpose of mocking a middle school and principal and his wife. And the decision before the courts was whether this was free speech, which was protected, or whether this was harassment, bullying, and any other kind of adjective you might want to use on the part of the students involved. So far, it's been a difficult decision for the courts, and people are appealing it along the way, and it's quite likely going to end up in the Supreme Court. It's an unfortunate case, obviously, when students end up using that vehicle to mock a middle school principal and his wife. Two other things I will comment on. I am part of a statewide committee that is working on the evaluation of superintendents. This is as part of the overall effort for the evaluation of administrators and teachers that includes the superintendents. We are developing a fairly comprehensive, what they call rubric. For those of you who are new to education, I will just say it's a very, very elaborate way of making sure that you cross all the T's and dot all the I's when you're doing something. And it's something that I think most school districts probably don't do all that well with their superintendents. I think thanks to the efforts of my predecessors, we have a pretty decent process of evaluating our superintendent, but this will be even more rigorous, and we will be meeting once more before the end of the year, and then our efforts will, assuming they're successful, will be published on January 12th, which is when many of the other things associated with the regulations will be published. And finally, I had a meeting on the Saturday after the conference ended. Some of you may remember that I reported on the drastic drop in enrollments on the Cape schools. Some of them have literally, over the last 10 years, have lost 25% of their student population. The simple solution, perhaps for some, might be simply to regionalize and for the school districts to cease to exist as a local entity. That's a difficult process to undertake. It takes a lot of consensus. This is an effort to perhaps do something equally creative, but that will still retain local control. It's so embryonic. We literally had our first meeting, how Wareham would be impacted, because unlike many of the other school districts on the Cape, Wareham has actually had relatively low loss of student population. The same can be said for Bourne. It seems like being on this side of the bridge is an advantage in this case. So I will report on this as it progresses, but bottom line is the Cape districts are acutely aware that some of them literally may not have a high school as a result of the drop in the populations, and they're trying to see what to do on behalf of their students. There are, I would add, two exceptions to this drop of enrollment. Nantucket is doing just fine, if you include them in the Cape and Islands anyway, and the Voc Tech schools are actually growing significantly. But outside of that, all the other school districts over the last 10 years are shrinking, and in some cases significantly. Any questions on any of the reports? Okay.
Could you speak on the resolution you got passed? Just for the record.
Yes. The resolution relates to a subset of the difficulties of doing a fair and constructive evaluation of a teacher specifically. This resolution did not address administrators. It specifically addressed teachers. And what the resolution said, as I said, it was passed by this committee and then sent on to the association. What the resolution basically said is, if you really want to do a fair evaluation of a teacher, it takes time and it takes resources. And that time can best be used by a person who is intimately familiar with the work that the teacher does. So what this says is that when you have a principal who has 40, 50, or 60 teachers, and that is the individual primarily responsible for the evaluations, it doesn't work. So in Wareham, since not this fall, but last fall, the department heads in the high schools have been intimately involved in the evaluation of the people within their departments. And starting this fall, the middle school and the elementary school schools in the district have a new position called instructional leaders. For this year, they will just be doing observations to get their feet wet, so to speak, with respect to the whole issue of evaluating another person. And starting next year, they will actually be involved in the evaluation process. The feedback that we have gotten from department heads and people who are part of the high school department heads, not surprisingly, is no matter what has to be said, it's always better to have it said by someone who knows you and it works with you and understands your subject. So believe it or not, as common sense, as much common sense is involved in that, that's a very unusual position for districts in the Commonwealth to take. They were fascinated by it when we talked about it in the workshop, and the school committee members, once they heard it, obviously felt it was something that they should support, and it'll be very interesting to see how many of them decide to move forward with it. The only downside to it, and I hasten to say it given the environment that we're in, is that it, not surprisingly, costs money. You have to actually put forward some resources to create the positions so that the evaluation can be done well. I would argue, and I think that this committee has argued by the fact that they passed this resolution, is if every professional deserves a good evaluation, and if you're going to do a good evaluation, it takes the right person, and we think we found the methodology to do that. So we hope it continues to spread across the Commonwealth. Okay, moving on. Superintendent's report.
The first item under my report has to do with the visitor from China, the Chinese administrator that was coming. Unfortunately, he was not able to come. He was not able to get a travel visa out of the country, and it's a long, complicated process that they have to go through, but he is planning on coming next fall. So next October would be the next time that a group of Chinese administrators would be coming. So the same gentleman, Mr. Yang Karen, would be coming at that point. He is a high school principal, and I am scheduled to visit him in April, hopefully to begin. I was hoping that I would meet him first here and then go there, but it will work in the reverse, and that we will try to do some Skyping between his high school and Wareham High School while I'm there, if we can get the times correct with the 23-hour difference.
Did you have any sense that it was anything more than bureaucratic and not political?
It talked about it being bureaucratic, but because the gentleman is a party official and that there are some changes happening in the political climate, maybe it is more than that, but I really don't have that information yet. And whether or not he'll share it with me when I'm there, I can't answer, but it should be interesting.
Okay.
The second was the Curriculum Review Advisory Committee. I think Cliff summarized that we had a healthy conversation about it. This is not a done deal. We need to continue working on this, and we will move ahead with it. The third item, all right, support for graduate students' study on transportation. I believe in your package you have something, it's called a draft motion, is that correct?
Yes.
Just as a background, this was dated 11/8. I believe that was the date when, Mr. Sweat, am I correct that you were with us at that meeting? So the chairman of the school board, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, the town administrator, the superintendent, and the chairman of the FinCom met in Mr. Andrews' office and came up with this draft motion. The idea was that since there were some members of the planning committee and some of capital purchasing committee and some members of the FinCom that still had questions about the financials of transportation, that we would allow them to do their own study and we'd give them whatever information they wanted.
Just to correct you, I was at the meeting where we agreed to have a draft motion, but I was not at the meeting where the motion was developed.
Okay. So this must have been a following meeting with Mr. Andrews, myself, and with Mr. Heath. Mr. Andrews drafted this on his computer while we were there, gave Mr. Heath a copy, myself a copy. I then said that I would be bringing it. Mr. Andrews had a selectmen's meeting before our school committee meeting. He brought it up, and there were some amendments made to it. And so at this time, without a copy of the amendments, I'm not in a position to ask you to support it or not. And I am afraid that we have actually missed the window of opportunity to have the grad students do the study this spring, because, as Mr. Andrews has said, finals are upon us in the colleges, and students have already chosen which advisor to work with on this independent study. And so that's where we are with this draft motion. When I get to the part about the lease bid that is on the agenda, and I will have a motion to make at that point about next steps. But at this point, I can't ask you to support this draft motion. Anybody have any questions about the draft motion?
Yes, Cliff.
I guess I'm getting old and crotchety, and but I don't understand. I need to know that we can't vote on this tonight because of logistic reasons. Because there's been some amendments to this at the selectmen's meeting. Well, I wasn't at the selectmen's meeting. I have no idea what those amendments are. But I would like to know, on the surface, those of you that have worked on this, would you support this motion and why? As it stands, forget about the amendments.
Okay.
I need to know from you folks.
I can only speak for myself.
Are you asking that question of the superintendent?
And you, if you worked on this committee.
I did.
Okay.
But we may have different responses.
That's fine. We still have to make an educated
Right.
guess at some point in time.
Right. I will give you my 2 cents. I believe we have studied this to death. In my office, I have 3 separate reports done by 3 separate committees that come out saying that it is cheaper for the town to run its own transportation department rather than putting it out to an independent person to do it. However, in the spirit of trying to work together, and since the capital planning person who had the questions, as well as the FinCom person, both asked for this, and they felt they needed this before they could support a plan to move forward in replacing our vehicles. So in order to get their backing, that's why I supported this. Mr. Sweat?
First, if I was listening to this, especially if I was a new person within the community, I would be very confused. So
I'm not a newbie and I'm confused.
right. So let me state this as simply as I possibly can. There are basically 2 ways to provide transportation for students in public schools, recognizing that kindergarten through 6th grade is required by law and 7th through 12 is not required by law, but many communities obviously do it. The 2 ways are have it to be a department of the school district or to subcontract it out to a private vendor. Many, many communities do this. We have been doing it in Wareham for a long time as part of the school district. For reasons that I won't speculate about, there are people who think it would be less expensive if we actually handed it over to a private contractor. I was part of a committee, seems like a long time ago, probably it was about 5 or 6 years ago, that studied this and came to the conclusion that it was not less expensive to give it to a private contractor. We put it out to bid again over the last few months, and the lowest bid we got, and this is where concrete numbers really do matter, the lowest bid we got was $2.4 million a year. I want you to remember that number because when the town approves its budget, the budget for the transportation department, the last time they approved a number, it was, drum roll, $1.4 million approximately. It goes up and down, 25, 50,000, depending on what they feel they need to cut, but it was approximately $1 million less. There is no way that you can get from 2.4 to 1.4 without it costing the town a lot of money. I am very convinced, and I have been responsible for making decisions far more expensive than this in my career, that it is the wisest course of action to keep it as part of the school department. Having said that, Some people just don't believe it. So the theory was, okay, fine. If you want to get 3 graduate students to take 3 different positions, one grad student is going to try and figure out the most cost-effective way to give it to a contractor. Another is going to figure out the most cost-effective way to keep it as part of the town. And the third grad student is going to try and figure out if they mix a combination of some private and some public, whether that would be the most effective way, and that all 3 would be supervised by a professor. In the theory that they all have this vested interest to put this together in the most complete and rigorous way possible, that we would come up with something that even the person who thinks privatization is the way to go today would feel compelled to go with the results of this study. That was the core basis of this. I, for one, am tired of the noise that this represents. I didn't ask to be put on this school committee by the voters because I was really excited about transportation. It had nothing to do with my interest in being on the school committee. I'm interested in the education of children. So to me, this is just noise, and I'd like to get rid of it. And anything that gets rid of the noise, I'm all for. So this motion was designed to get rid of the noise. It appears that the noise is more powerful than this motion because now the motion is for some reason not viable because someone has amended the motion. I'm going to say something, however, and that is if this committee wants to vote on this motion tonight, I will be perfectly happy to allow it. Because just because the Board of Selectmen decided to amend this motion doesn't mean we need to amend this motion. If the committee does not want to vote on this motion tonight, that's fine with me too. But we do not need to be controlled by an amendment made by another elected body. Mr. Fonz.
Can we vote on how to set the sewer funds or something? Because this is ridiculous, first of all. Next time, we're going to be having a meeting that Mrs. Panarisi is going to have the 4th graders trying to figure out how to tell the school committee on transportation. I would prefer if our Board of Selectmen, and they'll be in the paper tomorrow, I really don't care, I'm sick of it, would concentrate on doing their job and not our job. We've gone through committee meetings over and over and over with this transportation. I'd like to see our focus on how we can get more teachers in the system, how we can improve education in Wareham. And the transportation's been studied 25 times now because a couple of members or whatever, the Board of Selectmen, want to have a committee that we're going to have college students do a study. We might as well send this up to Barack Obama to do a study next. This is absolutely ridiculous, and there's no way, if we vote on it tonight, that I will support it. We've showed over and over and over again that it's cheaper to keep it in-house. This is just a waste of my time. I was put in office as to, first of all, we're laying off teachers, and we don't have books for kids and stuff like that, and they want to do study after study. Let the Board of Selectmen worry about running the damn town, and let us worry about the school system. I will not support this.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say on this subject?
I haven't had my say yet.
Go for it.
I completely understand the political reality of it, and I certainly understand that we really would like to have the support of the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee. And if they feel comfortable doing this, and that would be something that I would understand. However, I can't support it. I mean, in terms of working collaboratively, to be quite honest with you, and for the voting public, I don't care who runs transportation in this town. I don't care if the school department runs it. I don't care if they subcontract it out. I don't care. Because bottom line is it's a non-net school spending item, and I could care less. I care about 2 things. One is safety of the kids. That's number 1. And number 2, obviously, is the cost. We've been very, very diligent about making sure that we kept the transportation costs down to keep townside government operating, because that $1 million a year that we're saving year in and year out is keeping townside government operating. And we've been very loyal and very diligent to doing it. We have hired consultants which came under fire. We've had joint committees that were less than productive. We've had meetings, joint meetings of the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the School Committee on this subject. We have met, we have discussed. We have several members of the Board of Selectmen that ran on the safety issue of the school buses. Well, you know, you can't have it both ways. Now we're delaying the purchase of school buses? We need school buses. We don't need more rhetoric. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Apology not accepted. I didn't hear anything that you needed to apologize for.
You can't say the safety of the kids are the most important thing and now hold us up.
Do you have anything you'd like to add to this subject? Not, you don't have to.
I know. The concern that I have is similar to Cliff, is that we continue to delay what is needed right now. I am absolutely in support of new information that would come forward to say that it would be more cost effective to run the transportation system by outsourcing that. I'm all for it. I think that if it's, I know that it is being done. I've talked to Mr. Tatro, the director of the Transportation Committee, and also the superintendent, that the doors are open to any information that is needed regarding our current transportation system. And so if additional study, if someone wants to do additional study, then I'm all for it. Do it, absolutely. But that should be at the same exact time as we're addressing our immediate needs, which is we've had an aging fleet for a decade now. We have had an aging fleet for longer than anybody would ever want to see. And at the same time that we're taking a look at the long-term vision of what we should do with transportation, keep it in-house or outsource it, we need to address the immediate need right now, which is we need buses right this second. Right this second. So if I could ask for whatever conversations going forward, I'm happy to be part of it, that every single conversation that we have regarding transportation, there are two conversations in that same conversation. One is talking about how we make the long-term decision on how to address the transportation system, and the same exact conversation that goes on is how we can address the immediate need. Because I think that if we just keep talking about the long-term vision, we're going to just continue to delay, and we can't delay any longer. We need buses right now.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I don't want to say what I'm not supposed to say because it was a private conversation. However, I was told today that the town administrator recognizes that we have a need now, that we can't wait until next fall for vehicles, and that there is a plan being developed so that by the end of December there may be a way to fulfill the lease that I'm going to talk about when we get to the lease.
I'll support that.
Okay. I don't sense an overwhelming desire to vote on this motion. Therefore, let's
Can I
finish
withdraw
your...
it?
Yes. I don't think
Consider
it was ever
it
on...
withdrawn.
It was never on the table as far as I was concerned.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I think that, but I want to clarify that I think at least there are two reasons why we need to withdraw at this time. Not that we might not have a healthy debate on whether to support something like this, but the two reasons are because there might not even be an opportunity to do this study with new information that we found regarding the grad students, as well as the amendment that was made by the Board of Selectmen, and that we do want to continue to work collaboratively with them. So I would say personally that those would be the two reasons why I would say let's delay it, and I do hope that some sort of motion comes before us either tonight or in the future.
Well, we'll have another opportunity even this evening to talk about this issue, so let's move on.
There is a request by the OPEIU Local 6 to open negotiations for a successor agreement. And does anybody remember who was on that group as school committee members? Kenny would be one, and who would be number two?
We didn't have enough
Would anybody else?
So we have one and we need a second person
Okay.
to...
Ken, first of all, are you good to go in terms of participation?
You're pretty straight out.
You're straight out, does your former teacher speak for you?
Yes. But if we're strapped, I'll find a way. But between therapy and stuff, it's going to be difficult. I don't even know when.
They usually meet in the evening, but, you know, the idea first to figure out the whom and then to talk about calendar among the group. But it can be, you know, any two. Dr. Sylvia, I think, has had an opportunity to be on this before. Am I correct?
Secretaries?
Yeah.
I think I was. I thought it was bus drivers.
Bob was on it.
I'll do it.
So
Kenny and I can do it, between the two of us.
So if...
Ken, if you run into a jam, let me know and I'll do it.
So the two of you will do it then?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. So if we can, you know, talk after the meeting just about some possible dates. And whenever you have it, we can look down the road.
Fair enough.
Okay.
So
All set?
Michelle, you have that down? Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Mr. Luzon, the floor is yours.
Inform. Inform us about Inform, Mr. Luzon.
Please don't talk about buses.
We can give you the data on nothing.
If you want to get this committee going, just bring up transportation.
Good night, Mr. Oliver.
Good night, Mr. Oliver.
Good night, Mr. Oliver.
I can clear a room.
They've heard about your scintillating... No, sorry, Bob.
Mr. Luzon, they introduced you and 12 people just walked out.
I know. How do you feel about that?
But you didn't even say I'm out on a limb and I can...
Look at that.
Miss Mars, what happened to your hand, if I can ask?
Just like a little cyst.
Okay. So, but, all right.
It was her dog.
I can work tomorrow.
Thank you.
Looks like you had that prepared for
I did
town.
today.
Looks like you had that prepared for town meeting.
I'll work like this for
Oh, goodness.
Please take control, Mr. Luzon.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening, Bob.
So, you have a couple of documents in your packet, and two of those are providing you with a lot of information, detail about Pearson Inform. My intent tonight is not to give you a lot of detail about exactly how it works, what the nuts and bolts of it are, or any of those things, but to give you a very, very quick overview of what Inform will do. But I really want to spend the majority of the presentation showing you how a team, a second grade level team, actually uses data to make decisions about impacting and changing instruction to meet the needs of children. So you're going to have a fairly lengthy, and by fairly lengthy I mean about a 18 to 20 minute video of this process of teachers getting together, so you can have an idea of what that looks like when they really begin to use data in the way that they will. So just a couple of things that I want to mention to you. There are really two reasons why we looked at Inform and purchased Inform. And the first reason really has to do with the assessment of student learning. This triangle, and I know you can see it better on your own screen.
Would you periodically pause and open it up for questions, because this material is very important and also very new. So I don't want people to have to store it up for 10 or 15 minutes if they have questions. So periodically.
Sure. I can't store it up for 15 seconds.
So as you know, assessment has multiple levels to it. We have had a lot of conversations about and continue to have conversations about MCAS. MCAS is at the top of this circle, summative evaluation. And what we are going to be talking about is at the bottom of the circle, which includes things like formative classroom assessment, formative common assessment, and benchmark common assessments. But these are the day-to-day bits of data that are used to adjust instruction to make sure that students have achieved mastery through the sequence of skills that are necessary to be able to read. We're talking about ELA particularly today. Okay? So the purpose, number one, is to have one source of information around formative assessment. In addition to summative assessment, it is also in there. The second reason that we looked at purchasing Inform was as a tool for us to be able to gather data and provide interventions for response to intervention. One of the key components, or really three of the key components, as you can see in red, these are the 6 essential components of RTI. 3 of those have to do with data. If we don't have a solid data source, then we're not going to do a good job of using data to make adjustments in our instruction. Really, in summary of what Inform is, this is a data analysis and decision support tool. So there are really 2 functions. It certainly is to analyze data, but it's also to use data to make decisions about adjusting instruction, and also in looking at how students are responding to the interventions that we're providing for them. Very importantly, and unlike Data Warehouse at this point, this Pearson Inform, working along with PowerSchool, because it works on top of PowerSchool, puts the information in the hands of district and building administrators as well as in the hands of the teachers. So teachers will have access to and be able to look at their individual classrooms, their grades across their building, and grades and their scores across both sets of buildings. So all 3rd grades, for example, all 3rd grades at Deacon's School, all of the kids in my 3rd grade, and each individual child within my building will be looked at within what Inform has the capacity to be able to do. The key features of Inform for Wareham schools: this is one location. In one location you'll see that there is the ability to include in-the-moment targeted classroom assessments, or what might be called checking for understanding types of assessments, formative classroom assessments, formative common assessments, benchmark assessments, summative assessments, including MCAST, and progress and tiered intervention. So all of those components are loaded into this one location. It can be used across the district, across grades, at grade level team meetings, individual classrooms, and for individual students. Documentation as well is significant in that they are grouped by various groups, including class, grade, and cohorts, as well as individual assessments, groupings of assessments in the format of what's called an academic improvement plan, and I've given you an example, a copy of what one of those looks like. That is not another piece of paper or another document that a teacher needs to prepare. The format of Pearson Inform is to allow the data that we import into it to come together in what's called an academic improvement plan. So as a teacher talks with another teacher, talks to a parent, is trying to decide how to adjust instruction, putting them in tiered intervention, whatever they're trying to do about that student, they have one document with all of those formats of data, all those sources of data, I should say, in one location.
Can we stop there?
Yes.
Any questions so far? Anybody?
Can I make one comment?
Yes.
When Bob was talking about how the teachers can drill down to look at the data from all 3rd grades in the district, or just the 3rd grades of Deacon's, or just the scores of my 3rd grade children in my classroom, that data they will be able to use when they are creating, as part of the evaluation thing, their goals, because now they'll have hard data to look at, to compare, and once we get it in here, it will be over years. So you'll be able to look at your benchmark exams from this year and the year before and the year before that eventually, to look at patterns so teachers can see what they need to work on themselves, as well as their administrators will be able to see it. So it can be a very powerful tool once we get through the part of getting the data in and training people to add the data. So,
Rhonda?
Are there communities in our surrounding area that are using it, or in Massachusetts? I know that we're going to see an example. I don't know if this is in Massachusetts or somewhere else, but can you give me any information on that?
Yes, there are right now 4 communities that are using it in Massachusetts. This particular model, there are 2 products. One is Pearson Inform. One is called Limelight, which is sort of I'm going to say watered down, but that's probably the wrong word for it, wrong phrase for it, of the same product. But the closest to us is Pembroke, that is using it, as well as 2 other districts in the Metro West and also Western Mass. Pittsfield is the biggest of the districts that are using it right now. The district that we're going to talk about is Farmington, Connecticut. The reason Farmington, Connecticut, in the MassQ group, which is the user group, computer user group, Terry DiFilippo has a zillion contacts, and one of them is a man by the name of Ted Lindquist. Ted's district was appealing to us when we thought about trying to connect with somebody who's already gone through some of the bugs of the early workings of a new program. And Farmington is a town that's both a Power School town and a Pearson Inform town, and they're now in their 6th year with Inform, and many years beyond that with Power School as we are. So Ted has already come in and done an overview for our administrative team, and he has also provided us with this video of one of the, in their rollout, in Farmington's rollout of Pearson Inform, they have at one school each year rolled out Pearson Inform. So several of their schools have multiple years in now. This is the last school in their elementary school in their rollout. So the video you're going to see that they are just also beginning to learn some of the elements of Inform, which made it a very good video to have people look at today. I sat with the 3rd grade teachers at Minot this afternoon and presented this to them. They were very, very happy about it, very happy to get the data in their hands, and also the kind of information that they were hearing from the teachers in Farmington. So it's not a Pearson product. This video is not a Pearson product. This is a live video of people sitting down and talking about how to use data using both Power School and Pearson Inform in a real school district.
All set?
Yes, thank you.
Bob, how does the data get into Inform?
So part of the process, part of what we purchased was an initial upload of data through Pearson. So they are going to import the first set of data, and then there is a training, a half-day training for our folks, 2 of those people being Elise from Jan's office and Terry DiFilippo, who will learn how to do all the uploading so that we can do that ourselves.
Uploading?
Yes.
So not manual entry.
Correct.
But uploading. And
Correct.
What are they uploading?
Yes.
MCAS, one thing.
The initial loading of the assessments, grade GMAE, is done manually.
Well,
But the data files are uploaded.
Not that I don't...
The data files are uploaded. So if it is in a common form, so if it's in an Excel sheet, for example, it uploads from an Excel sheet into... So I don't know what you mean when you say manual, but I don't call an upload of...
Manual means individual scores of individual teachers
No.
being manually input.
Absolutely not.
Okay. So... And
in fact, I can tell you, just to answer you, I just got an email from Terry around 2 o'clock, and around 4 o'clock, our tech person from Pearson saying that the MCAS scores have been sent by Terry to that person, and that person has received them in the format that he needs. That part of it is done from...
The focus of my question is, we will not be increasing the amount of data entry that our teachers will be doing. That's the right answer, but
Well,
Bob is hesitating.
Yes, I'm hesitating only in that we're going to be putting more information in. So in the sense that we're going to be able to have more information put into the system. So if there were 10 tests, I'm just going to say, if there were 10 tests now and we only relied on 2 to make decisions about kids' progress, if we, for example, have progress monitoring measurements that we have now the capacity to create, then there are going to be more measurements to be able to upload into that product. But if we were to look at an apples-to-apples comparison, what we do now with the data we have and what we would do then, there's not a difference. The advantage, though, is that we can put many other types of data into this, and there are 2 requirements. It has to be in a standard format, so Excel or a certain type of a format, and we need to provide cut scores. Those are really the 2 things. If those 2 things can happen, that data can be uploaded.
I guess I'm somewhat comfortable, but not yet there, but I'll hold off. Jessica?
Just about the uploading the information, they wouldn't have to would they be uploading it to both PowerSchool and this new program or Inform, or would it just be they upload it once and it is to both?
It is to both, and you'll actually see that on the video where something was uploaded to Inform, and then they went into PowerSchool. This is around tiered intervention. They go into PowerSchool, they click a button to allow that information to be put into PowerSchool, and it's there. They don't have to do it twice.
Why don't you continue?
Okay. So in the video, there are just some things that I would like you to be able to look at. One of them is process, because one of the things that they have done in Farmington is really put some formalization around grade level meetings, so that you'll see a lot of elements of what you might see in a professional learning community meeting in terms of norms and process and so forth. Also, if you'll keep an eye on the data use, how are they getting the data and how are they using the data? You'll hear that they are going to reference both PowerSchool and Inform, and that there is collaborative decision making as part of this process of deciding what are we going to do about these students who have been struggling academically.
And these are real teachers, not actors?
These are real teachers, not actors.
Okay.
Or actresses, correct. Okay, so just give me 1 second while I pull it up. And hopefully we'll be ready to go.
Or soda.
Here's our agenda for the day. We're going to be reviewing our norms, and then I'm going to look at the conversation protocol we see that we're going to use today. And we're going to, using the protocol, we're going to review students in the intervention strategies we currently have going and see if we want to make any recommendations for new. And then we're going to assign, I'm going to show you a new thing, assigning new students to targeted groups, and then we're going to debrief at the end and see how we did. So, norms. Being on time, obviously, agreeing with ideas, not people, trying to not interrupt when someone's talking, but we have a tendency to do that every once in a while because we get so exuberant. That's okay. And then debriefing at the end, sharing, just to see how we did on our norms. Did I forget anything? Oh, good. Okay. All right. So let's look at the next sheet, which is using data to improve student achievement. This is the protocol that we're going to use today. Okay, there we go. So here's our protocol. Step 1, and the outcome is to have us examine data and develop instructional interventions for identified students. Those are the students we already have in interventions. And the focus will be on those students who were assigned already, but we might have a chance to assign 1 or 2 more. I think we have a few customers. So step 1 is preparation. You've already done that. You've brought the individual literacy profile, which are these, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And the AIP is something new I'm going to show you. And then the intervention results, which you have in their literacy folders. And then we're going to, step 2 is inquiry. What's the student's current intervention and why? And I think that will come out as we have our conversation. You know, why is the kid in the intervention and why do we want to keep them in? How is the student responding to the intervention, framed around the data that we brought? And what did the intervention specifically target, I think will also come out in the evaluation, and then we'll decide, what are we going to do? Are we going to keep them in the intervention? Are we going to take them out? Or are we going to do something different? Or is the student going to be moved to a higher tier or recommended for something else, like a 504 or special ed? Okay? So let's just start with, as part of the preparation, I just want to kind of remind you here, look here on Power School. I want to show you the individual literacy profile that's already printed out, but this is something that you've been using already, and it's something the literacy specialist kind of put together with Ted to help us look at what the kid's currently doing. So here's Abby, and she's one of the students who's already in an intervention. And the reason she got in the intervention was because of all this data here, and because at the end of the year last year, she wasn't meeting standards. So these are all of our report card indicators, and you can see there are some M's, which means she met, and some N's, which means that she was near. But then if you look down here, she did not meet end of year standard in reading in kindergarten or in first grade. And if you look down here even further, the assessment data in reading, this tells us, this is the really good stuff that tells us really where she's at. And at the end of first grade, she was at a text level I, and we expected a J. And at the beginning, she's still an I, and we expected a J. So she's in one of the interventions. So now let's go to Inform. So here we are in Inform. And when you log on to Inform, this is exactly what it's going to look like. But I'm going to show you a new piece here. I'm going to clear the dashboard. Keep in mind that I'm very new at this. And I'm going to show you this cool new thing. This is called Student Groups. And I'm going to click on here, and you see over here, kids who have not met standard at the end of the year or expectation at certain points in the year are put into an intervention group. So here's grade 2. And I'm actually, I want to go up to here. Oh boy, maybe I need to. Okay, yeah. I'm going to click on West District, and then go down here and click on Farmington Public Schools, and only our kids should come up. Yes. Okay, there they are. So now I can get rid of this to give us more room. And we don't need to have these student numbers, and we don't even need to have all the names. I'm just moving these things over so you can see this really cool part. You see these colored diamonds here? These are all different interventions, and these are the names of the interventions here. But if we look at Abby, who we looked at in Power School, you can see if I just scroll the arrow over there, it says that she's in LLI blue, and the entry date is actually the date that I put her in. What we'd love to be able to have is we'd love to be able to change this so it actually reflects the date that she was first started in the intervention, but hopefully they're working on that. And then let me show you one other thing. I'm going to close this out. If we go over a little bit more, you can also see by the yellow bar, keep following Abby, she's also in Lexia. So if I scroll over that, again, it tells us the entry date. Yes, 10/22. That's right, same date. Because that's when I entered it. That's when you entered it, not exactly the date she started. Exactly, yeah. So it would be nice to have that. You know, and if you scroll down here, you can actually, even though we can't see the names, you can see the names of the students. See how when you scroll over, isn't that cool? Mm-hmm. So you can see which intervention the kids are in.
So will this lead to not using the paper one that we're currently?
Yes, it will. Yep. So we will just have this up at team meetings and things like that. All right. So let's go to this right here. Let's click on this and let's talk about Abby. And Charity, what I'd like to have you do is kind of talk about how she's doing. And I'm going to show you, if I click on this notepad here, we'll listen to what you have to say about, you know, how she's doing in LLI, and everybody else can chime in too. And then we'll quickly summarize with some notes about whether we want to exit her, keep her in, or do something different.
I have a question.
Yes.
Where do the notes go?
The notes, I'm going to show you that later. The notes go in this thing called an AIP report, which I'll show you at the end. That's a great question. Isn't it cool? I know. Okay.
Okay, so Abby's in LLI and Lexia, and she has been almost since the very beginning of the year based on her year data. She's making progress in LLI and in the classroom. She started with me on a level, her benchmark intervention or instructional level was an I,
word? Is there, repeats? What are the errors? I'm wondering if that's kind of all.
I don't have her literacy folder in front of me, but as I recall, her errors were mostly, she's monitoring meaning and structure, but she's making lots of visual errors, I think. She's pretty good about making sure her reading makes sense. It's when she gets stuck on a word, knowing what to do and how to take it apart.
Eyes for ears. There, students have corrections.
It's also like an inefficient visual because she looks either at the first part or the last part, but not all the way through.
And she's kind of stubborn about using that strategy always. We've done a lot of work with using other strategies like skipping the word, reading back, thinking about what would make sense. When trying to just take the word apart isn't working for you, and that's really all she wants to do.
She seems to get the beginning of the word, FP, and then guesses her way through it, so it kind of makes sense to her. Especially on the word special. She went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 attempts and was unable to get the word.
Does she show the same stuff at LLI right now? As with, who's with her?
Lisa. No, Lisa said that she's a little more flexible with the strategies than LLI.
Well, it's a small group, so maybe she's probably more comfortable.
Is she getting reports on Friday from the lefty that she's not passing certain vowel patterns?
Maybe the vowel also long silent E.
What if we do this? What if the team, what if we decide, if we decide to keep her in LLI, what if I make a quick summary of what we just said up there? And then we could do the same thing with Lexia. And does everyone agree that she should stay in the 2 interventions? And then what if I do a little bit more diagnostic work with her later on this week to find out, try to dig deeper and find out some more things, and then get back to the LLI person and reprogram Lexia so that she's doing exactly what she needs to be doing. And then we revisit in 6 weeks. How does that sound? Okay, so what should we say here?
Continuing interventions.
She's got her grades area need right now? Yes. This will just be the Lexia note, so we have to do this on, I'm sorry, this is LLI, we have to do this on Lexia as well. So let's focus on, continue in LLI, greatest need is taking words apart and reading, right? Word solving number 1. I like that better. And how about if we say, more of the same for telling, yeah, monitoring, okay. All right, and then should we say,
For Lexia?
no, something like, revisit this week?
Revisit.
Will this have a date on it, Kelly?
I don't know, we can just say, so put in our date. Maybe I'll put that in.
This is where we put the date in probably. Okay, it does it automatically, great.
Do you want to say that you're going to do diagnostic? Testing or digging deeper? Yeah. Let's
Bob, could you pause that for a second?
think of what other diagnostic tools.
There's some phonemic awareness and phonics assessments in the names test, and
I think we get the sense that there's a lot of collaboration, and we get the sense that the informed tool is a way of documenting that collaboration. Is there anything more we should be getting from this?
Well, so what I wanted you to get from it was the fact that there are a variety of instruments in there, a variety of data sources, that this isn't just summative data information, but
Yep.
it is...
We got that. Alphabet, acronym soup.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I heard a lot of acronyms that I'd never heard before.
And I think that the point of this is to look at improvement in instruction comes from the formative assessments and the work that's done to improve instruction on not only just for the classroom, but for those students who are really struggling. We look at MCAS scores here, and that tells us whole group scores, but it doesn't tell us how we're improving student instruction. And the advantage for both response to intervention as well as the kinds of assessment data that we're looking at for classrooms is to be able to have all of that in one place. And that really is the message.
Ken?
What is the correlation between this and Power School? Am I missing something, or?
So Power School really is the core of the data. So all students are in Power School. A lot of the information is stored in Power School, and Pearson Inform works along with Power School. So a little bit further into the tape, you would see that that data can be connected between Power School and Inform.
So the students and parents have access to Inform just like they would Power School?
They would have access to Inform, that's correct. And if they wanted to know exactly how their student is doing, rather than digging through a file worth of how they do 2 years ago, how they do 3 years ago, what's the progression for them, if you were taking MCAS scores or if you were taking Dibble scores or one of the other instruments that are used, you would be able to look at that over time and see exactly what the areas are, the drill down specific areas that they're having trouble with, and what interventions have been used for them over the course of years and what the progress has been on those.
May I? So, they have the same access as Power School where there's a note section on here? Is that for the teachers' benefit, the students, parents, or all three?
All of the above. There's something called, and it's a little bit further down in the tape, an academic improvement plan that includes all of that. All of the data, summative data, formative data, and interventions that have been attempted, the actual skills that are involved in those interventions and how kids have done with those interventions.
Thank you.
Who are the people? Are these all classroom teachers?
There's an instructional leader there who's running the meeting, and there are the others are second grade teachers at that school.
And
it's a grade level meeting.
Okay, and you would expect them to have this kind of discussion about every student that those classroom teachers are for whom they're responsible?
So this particular group would be a group that would look at those students who are struggling in a particular set of skills.
Okay, so they're part of the 20%, if you will?
Yes.
So if the 20% was larger than 20%, it would be that much more of a struggle to have this kind of in-depth conversation, because just the amount of time it takes. When is this taking place? Is it after school, during school? When is it taking place?
That's a very good question, because just yesterday, Janice and Bob and I were at a collaborative workshop looking at how to deal with that 20% and the collaboration. And one of the things we believe is needed is an extended time for grade level meetings. We don't have it currently. We need it. And that's something that we're going to have to find a way to make that happen.
That's not an easy
No, it's not.
task. Do you think there's value in continuing the tape?
That's entirely up to you.
Well, we don't know what's on the tape.
Well, I wouldn't present it to you if
I
I didn't think it was valuable, so
I understand.
guess I don't know how to answer your question.
And I didn't know how to answer the question as it was posed by the superintendent either. So it was Cliff?
Before we go on,
yes,
a couple of questions. The time question bothers me because from what I understand now, aren't we working, especially at the elementary level, even a little bit at the middle school, on interdisciplinary teams? Don't they have team time for interdisciplinary teams?
We have interdisciplinary teams in grades 4 and 5, and on one side of the district in grade 3. The teachers have prep time at the same time, but that is their teaching prep. They do not have common planning time during the school day.
Okay, so I guess that leads me to my next question. My next question is, all right, I'm going to just make up a name. Mrs. Smith's 4th grade class, or 3rd grade class, whatever. Who's in the room right now? Who's in that room?
Here, these are 2nd grade teachers.
So all of the teachers in that school who teach 2nd grade?
No. The people, I thought the question was who's in the room right now.
I want to know who those people are.
They have 2nd grade teachers and an instructional leader.
Okay, so are they all the 2nd grade teachers of that school?
Yes.
So those are all the 2nd grade teachers?
Yes.
Okay.
And if it were, so this afternoon, I know I heard that there's no time during the day for those meetings. I sat in a 40-minute grade level, 3rd grade level meeting this afternoon after school. It's an extended time for them, and some of our discussion is how do you make that 40 minutes longer so it's more effective? If this type of a meeting were to happen at the Minot School, at this point, a grade level meeting, it would happen at 3 o'clock. That's when I was there today, and it would go until 3:40. The problem is, yes, the kind of work that needs to be able to happen, we need to look for more time to be able to have that. That's not a Pearson Inform thing. That's how do you effectively create change in how kids are learning.
So in 3 and 4, we have specialization. All right, would that be an interdisciplinary group that would work on that? Because to me, it makes more sense to do it interdisciplinary rather than tape and light, because you'd have 4 teachers or 2 teachers or 3 teachers having the same kids.
You definitely could, but as Mr. Lozano pointed out, it would have to be done after school hours, after the children have left, because we don't have sufficient teachers, for example, to have all of the children in special or in some other
So there would be an additional expense in terms of remuneration to the teachers, is that correct?
Unless we did it during clock hours. I mean, we do have a little bit of time after school between when the children are dismissed and when the teachers end their workday.
Yeah, well, they're supposed to be doing other things there too, but okay, that's all right. I just, for me, I'm of the mindset that I want to see the rest of it for myself, but I'm of the mindset that this might be, for me right now, information overload. That number one, if we can afford it and we have the budget funds to do it, and if my leadership says it's a good idea, obviously I want to support it. So I do want to see the rest of it, but I don't know if I need to know at this point in time the level of detail that you're giving me right now. But I do want to see the rest of it.
Tonight? You want to see the rest of it?
Yeah, I want to see it.
Continue.
How much more is there?
There's 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Continue.
I do.
And taking the NAEMS test and the DSA and looking across the 2 assessments, and that takes words apart, actually CBC words, but breaks them apart. So, I know exactly what he's doing. A lot of the things are in the benchmark assessment as the alternate assessment. So, and then I'll share the data with all of you so you can kind of see what the possibilities are. How does that sound? All right, so we're saving that. Go back to Abby, and I'm going to click on her, double click, and look at all the cool stuff that comes up. And here's what I want to do. Let's see if I can remember. I want to go to her AIP, which is Academic Improvement Plan. And I'm going to click on this, and all these little things come up because I'm going to show you a report in a minute. So we don't need signatures or parent-student activities. We're not ready for that. Parent-student goals, we're going to get rid of these things. Concept performance. But the rest of the stuff we're going to keep, and I'm going to show you a preview. Let's see what we've got here. Keep your fingers crossed. Drum roll, please. Look at that. It's beautiful. So here is her performance profile, and these are DSA scores and text level from kindergarten all the way up. And then these scores here, let's see if we can make them bigger so you can see. All right, yeah. So, like this is DSA in kindergarten and text levels all the way through. Then here's the data, when the session was, the year. And then these are all the different test scores she did. We're not going to look carefully at it now, but let's go down here. She's in a targeted group. See that? She was assigned by TED. What I'm hoping is that they let people like me assign it, so you can see who assigned it. And then down here, look at our notes. Wow, that's cool. Isn't that cool? Yeah, except I saved it twice, so that's a little bit of clickitis, I think.
Is this something
to make SRBI easier for us to manage. Okay, so it's all in one place. So this is called an AIP plan. So, and I can print this out for you and let you see it. And actually, there's one right there except without the notes. So you have one right in front of you. But now let's say, okay, we have a new student we want to put in LLI, and I think we should look at Nick. Charity, he's your student again, right? Nick's already, he's in this grade 2 targeted group. Do you all agree that we should tell him an LLI and that the data supports that he really needs an intervention? Okay. So what I would do is I would click on this green arrow, and it says the name so you can't get it wrong. When you scroll your arrow over, it says the name. And here's the date, the entry date, and it says LLI blue, and the frequency and duration would be 30 minutes, 5 days a week. It's a tier 3 intervention. And one of the reasons why it's okay to put this kid in the tier 3 intervention as opposed to like a tier 1 or tier 2 is because he has had interventions before, and then he was in reading recovery last year, which is a tier 3 intervention, and over the summer he made a big slide. So I think it's important to give him that much support again in that small group to get him back up to where he was.
Are you putting a PTA group?
Yes. He's going to go, yes, and we had somebody move, so, okay, so what we could do is we could put some notes in here, but I think what we'll do for time's sake is just push save, and so now he's, save, close, and let's see if he's in.
If it's agreeable, what I'm going to do is go to the last minute or two so you can get a summary of what the teachers have to say. If I can do this magically, it would be wonderful.
Making paper copies, it's all there. And even all the team members.
This is just the teacher's feedback about it.
And that was all in one place, too, all in one place, which is nice. I like the graphs, I mean, it's stunning. You'll see that it's, all along from kindergarten, we're still not making goal. I think it's pretty, even though we have all these interventions in place.
It's pretty clear and powerful to have that document to show to parents. At conferences or PPT.
Although I like the start date to be fixed, because I think that's so important when you're counting 2 a day to, 6 weeks, and we have to watch our tracking, having that start date be precise for every individual student has to be there.
And I know we just talked about reading, but is this going to be like his math interventions and all that kind of stuff on there?
Well, yes, I've seen like a video of math interventions and how they track each module, but I don't know if we have that yet. But I'm sure we're going to get that and writing also. So we need to get some writing interventions.
Well, right, yes, we do. I think the notes part.
Yeah, I like
the notes part is cool because when you sit and look at a first grade student with the numbers, you don't know the teacher's talked about. But now, with the notes in there, you can say, oh, look what they were worried about in first grade, about fluency, about such and such, compared to just an F,
And I was
45.
wondering, is this something, do you always have to be present to do this? Because, like, if we're at our team meeting, and we're talking about Abby, and we take the notes, when we meet at our intervention meeting, I think it would be so much quicker because we just click it up, because we can now see what, instead of Charity having her say everything.
Yes,
I like that idea.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Exactly.
Just some final comments to let you know where we are in the process of rolling out Inform. The steps that are thus far completed, the project team has been assigned, consultants in place, the orientation to administrators has been completed. There has been a kickoff webinar, the project timeline is in place, the data for the first upload at the time of writing this was identified. It's now identified and received by Pearson in the appropriate form. There is a follow-up webinar on, it's actually the 21st of November, to finalize the training dates and upload schedules. What you can anticipate in terms of next steps is the initial data upload of the data team training so that they can upload whatever information we want to put in there. Administrator training and initial staff training. Spring of 2012, the advanced staff training, full upload complete, and I believe that we talked about March as a school committee presentation with the data in place.
With some of the data in place.
With some of the data in place. Thank you, Dr. Rabinovich. So I apologize for the detail. However, I also feel that beyond the MCAS scores, this is real, with a real intervention and real improvement occurs. And you can see by the staff, I think, there that there is some positive response. I can tell you, certainly the Minot staff, third grade staff today, felt very, very good about the fact that they are not going to have to be shuffling papers, and they can have all of the data in front of them in a way that it is meaningful and more efficient for them.
Questions?
I have.
Rhonda.
I love the software. I do. I think that being able to have additional data points for us to take a look at our kids and see where they are at the classroom, having real-time data, always a fan of that. But I know better than most, coming from the background, is that no software is successful if it's not implemented in the correct environment, or that the environment has to be ready for something like this, and that all the pieces have to be put in place, meaning that you have the time, that it's replacing something so that the folks that would be using it see it as a replacement for something that they're currently doing manually. They see it as a benefit to their everyday work environment. If any kind of software is pushed down as you have to do this and that's pretty much it, never is going to be successful, and that you especially have the right ongoing support in a building, not just at central administration or consultants coming in, like that person every single day that's there to be able to answer questions or concerns. If someone's struggling, I mean, we just saw the person that's on there, she was like, I'm new at this, hold on, and what if something did go wrong? Who is that go-to person? So can you talk a little bit about those concerns that I have? You know, is the environment right now? If we're talking about that we're struggling with finding time to even do this on an everyday basis, what other things are you seeing that might be challenges, or and also talk about a little bit about the ongoing support piece?
Okay, well, we didn't just purchase software, we purchased the training package that includes many of those things. But beyond that, when you ask the question, is the time right, it's I believe it's very much right, because as I said in one of the slides about RTI, for example, and the components of RTI being very much tied into the collection of data. The truth is we don't have an instrument that collects data effectively and puts it in the teacher's hands.
Right, and
today.
I agree with you that the need is there.
Right.
Absolutely, the need is there, but have we built the infrastructure within the schools? Sorry.
So let me. So the result of that, if it's not in place currently, is that it's workaround time. It's, well, how do I get to the data then? How do we make decisions that are effective decisions based on data if the instrument's not in place? Teachers want to have progress monitoring tools. They hear it in their training as they go through the RTI. Progress monitoring, universal screening, they're all words that they hear, and their question consistently comes up, then where are the progress monitoring instruments, and how do we take all of this data, that there are some over here and there's some over here and so forth, and be able to look at it in one place so that it makes sense and we can make decisions about adjusting instruction as a result of it. So I think that some of the frustrations I have heard from the teachers is that they do want to have this type of a product. When we looked at products, when Terry spoke with other people who have used products similar to this, that was really the question. How do we, in the most efficient way, put that information together so that it's meaningful and it is in their hands? It is not in their hands today. And we need to be able to put it in their hands. So their response, I'll use the third grade team at Minot as the example, that is the excitement for them, that there is a vehicle to be able to make that happen. and that it is tied to PowerSchool, so it's not yet another new thing that's out here with a whole different format, and it's something that we know nothing about. It is very much tied to PowerSchool. There is one of the things that I skipped, as I said, that the information that's in Form, you can go into PowerSchool, you can select the pieces of that data that you want, and be able to have it go right into PowerSchool. Other than a click of a button, there is simply no part to that. In terms of it being ready, when Ted Lindquist came to talk to the administrators, what he talked about was that there are really two pieces to the training for staff. The first is very, very easy. It's basically being able to let them know, here's what you click to be able to get to a student profile, here's what you click to be able to get to your classroom profile, here's what you click to be able to get to your third grade team profile, the third grades across your school. The second part of it is using it for some of the purposes of RTI. You heard them mention the notes and so forth. There needs to be a vehicle for the interventionists, the people that are providing the second and third tier of instruction, to communicate with the classroom teacher and to archive that information so that we can see the patterns over time of their response to intervention. So that is built into Inform through the notes and so forth, and also the archiving of, let's say, 3 or 4 years worth of dibbles as a first grader enters fourth grade, and you can say, gee, how's this kid done in the last 4 years? Well, it's there in this one location. Has this child ever done well with this particular type of intervention? The data is there.
And again, I do understand about the need and the benefit of this software. I mean, it's what I sold for 10 years of my life, the need and the benefit of using the software to make an organization more efficient. I think that the only thing that I'm concerned about right now is, and I also sold the you-know-what out of support packages also, but it was at my company's website company or software company. The need for, and I've always seen it fail when a thoughtfulness wasn't done, when the folks implementing the software at their company were not thoughtful about making sure that the infrastructure was there around internal training and support, and that it was adopted because it was replacing an existing activity that was currently going on. So then the employees saw it as a benefit, as well as that it was easy to use, and that they saw the benefit, basically the reporting, and that they had the support to right in their backyard. Those are the key pieces that I would just want to hear more information about, and tonight might not be the time, maybe you and I can talk, but how I need more information on that, because I'm so afraid that we're investing in this as a district, and 3 years from now it's not meeting your expectations or ours. And so I would want us to take an additional look, and I'm sure you already have, but I need more information on those pieces.
Okay. Cliff?
I admire your courage, Bob. I really do.
Uh-oh.
No, I do, because this is a huge paradigm, in my opinion. I've got some concerns that I would be less than honest if I didn't share with you, and probably most of them is due to my ignorance, because I haven't gone through the training. Oh, lights are out. But I guess that my main concern is about capacity, and I'm not sure right now that we systemically have got the capacity to make this work to its optimum potential. And when I talk about capacity, I'm talking about not only personnel, but also the environment in which we work. For example, common planning time, or the ability to get the teachers to buy into something that could or could not make their lives easier. I'm not questioning whether it's going to have educational benefit, because I think it will. But if I was a young teacher, particularly at the elementary level, and I was going to be using this, I would be, very concerned about first being able to diagnose and to recommend for intervention, and then to collaborate on the level of intervention, and then to establish collaboratively pedagogical strategies, and then to constant assess those strategies and those strategies that we've implemented. The other thing that kind of bothers me is the fact that I don't think that Power School is being used universally at the elementary school as we speak right now. And so I don't know if there's a dovetailing with Power School. There seems to be. And then the other thing too is, I may be all wrong because I have computeritis to the nth degree, but it seems to me that there's going to be a real important time commitment on input. Just input. Forget about the diagnostic. Just input. Input in the information that has to be input. I don't know who's going to do that. So my question is, in terms of capacity, is what exactly are we expecting from our teaching staff? The other thing too is, and I'm really concerned about the fact that we are still working on dovetailing scope and sequence, benchmarks. We're still working on common assessments. We're still working on common performance-based assessments. We're not doing it, to my knowledge, hardly any collaborative grading, and I think that all factors into this. So, like I said, I admire your courage because I think your intent is legitimate. I think it has all of the potential to be good for kids and good for instruction, leading to better performance. But I have some serious questions on our systemic capacity to make this work. And
Cliff, could you define the this when you say this? Because much of what you said has to do with all of the other things that are going on. I mean, Inform simply is a tool to
well,
put
yeah,
all
everything.
That data in
I'm
one
talking
place.
I'm talking about all the aspects of RTI. But RTT, well, you know, like alphabet soup. But you know what I meant.
Yeah.
Response to intervention. You know, if this is just a part of it, I understand that. But I'm not saying it won't work. What I am saying, it just appears to me, as someone that's out of the profession now, all right, that we're putting an awful lot on teachers' plates. And it may be fruitful. It may be something that they can really point to as making a difference in terms of the performance of the academic performance of their kids. I don't know. You're my expert. You say that it's a good thing, and I believe you. I'm just concerned. It just seemed to me, as an outsider, it seems overwhelming.
And I think my first response is that I think we've got to separate out the pieces of good instruction in student learning from the purchase of a piece of software.
Oh, I don't have any problem purchasing the software. None whatsoever.
Right.
If you want it, you got it.
But the software is really to ease some of that load, because it is going to make it much easier for the staff. Even more important than it being easier, it's putting it in the hands that they don't have right now.
Okay.
And,
I'll take your word for it.
But the other parts that you're talking about, I think that we have gone through a fairly thoughtful process that I've presented to you in the past about what's a reasonable pace to roll out response to intervention to classroom teachers. So the idea, for example, of going K to 5 and having everybody do it differently starting K to 5 September 2011 was not what made sense. It was, number one, to give teachers a good deal of training, 36 hours of training before anything is expected
No, I
of
understand
them.
that.
Put a coach in place with them when they actually roll it out, and only do it first time around one grade level and then 2 grade levels at a time over the next year and a half, and keep those supports in place. So
to be quite honest, I hope it works. I really do. I'm not trying to be gloom and doom here, Bob.
Well,
I'm really
and
not.
honestly, I'm not trying to sell it. The reality is we need to make some changes in how our students are performing.
Well, and I think I mentioned some things that I think has to take place along with this, concurrent with it. I think we still need to work on those scope and sequences, those benchmarks, those common performance-based assessments, and particularly collaborative grading. I think that's key to it too. So I think those are some things that dovetail into this. That's just I don't want to prolong the meeting, but you can understand.
Absolutely.
From an outsider, I'd say, oh wow.
I'm feeling a little courageous as we sit here.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ken?
All set.
When we asked the principals at the MCAS workshop they had a magic wand. The two elementary school teachers both said the same thing. They wanted increased time on learning. So,
And collaboration.
excuse me?
And collaboration, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they were against collaboration.
No, they wanted both.
I see a conflict because this is not going to increase time on learning. If anything, we don't have the vehicle to even implement this, which is more collaboration time. So if, on a theoretical level, it's clear that this is needed. It's not clear to me how it's going to be implemented, given the fact that we don't have the collaboration time. And if we had the collaboration time, is it better to have collaboration, or is it better to have more time on learning? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not an educator. But when I hear both principals, especially of elementary school, saying they want more time on learning, this isn't it. That's a comment you don't need to respond. What I was personally hoping for, may still be achievable in the following sense. It appears that even if there was no collaboration, and it appears since the input is not going to be from teachers manually putting stuff in, but it's going to be uploaded for them to receive, that the individual teacher will still be able to, once they're familiar with the software, pull up data on their students and get a very clear picture, not only of the current year, but eventually of prior years' experiences with other teachers, including the notes of what they were struggling with, as one teacher said, not the notes, not just the grades, but actual notes that puts some meat on the bones of the performance, so to speak.
Tied to targeted skills.
Right. That, if I was a teacher, if I could literally grab a couple of minutes and not have to go to a meeting and pull that data, that might be extremely useful to me, and it sounds like that's going to be part of this. That I can quickly, as an individual teacher, look at my class and see what's happening in a graphic way that I might not intuitively have known. And in fact, sometimes your intuition is wrong, and the data is going to give you a somewhat different picture than you suspected. The other thing I was hoping to get out of this was a management and a school committee perspective, not obviously on an individual student, but on the system. In other words, how are we doing a third of the way into the school year?
That's what you're expecting tonight?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm saying eventually. No, absolutely not.
Thank you. Because I really missed the mark. If that was the case.
No, I knew this was just an exposure to the system.
Right.
Never anticipated it. Understand that we'll get somewhat of a picture in March. Okay? Incomplete compared to what it might be a year from March.
Right.
Okay? So, no, we're on the same page.
Okay.
So, a top-level, global look at how the individual schools, and maybe even the individual grades, but certainly not the individual classrooms or the individual students, that's also coming. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, I have the full implementation of what you're describing. Seems like an enormous task, and it seems like we don't actually have the organization and the time and the resources to make it happen as we sit here tonight. I hope we can someday do it, but having said all that, it still seems like it may have some significant benefits, and I'm hopeful. Yes?
I don't want Bob to go out of here with the wrong impression. I want to make it very, very clear to you my position on this, because I raised some issues that are important to me. But make no mistake, we've, at least I, as a member of the school committee, have bought into this. I mean, we've not only purchased the software, we've had presentations, and we've got it as part of the superintendent's goals this year. So this is for real. This is something that, has been endorsed, at least by this member of the school committee and a vote of the school committee as a whole. So I don't want you to get the idea that we're having second thoughts or second guesses, but as this thing gets rolled out, I'm sure there's some questions and some additional information or some things that some current practices that could dovetail into it, all right, should be discussed. But at no time do I want you to think that for any reason I am reneging on my commitment to make this work.
And Bob, in March, I think it would be a very compelling presentation if we had essentially every level of educator as a part of it. So if I could hear a 3rd, 4th, 5th grade teacher talking about the value that this represented, if I could hear an instructional leader talking about the value that it represented, principal, director of curriculum instruction, superintendent, and the school committee hopefully will be getting some of that value. If at all level, in their own way, they're getting value out of this, that would be something I would love to see in March.
Just as a final comment, I think that I do want to be careful about separating what we're introducing that's new from what has been in place. Inform in and of itself is a tool to make this more efficient and more immediately available to the teachers as they make decisions. There's also a benefit to it around providing interventions as we roll out RTI. So I absolutely agree that we're taking on a great deal, but the other side of that sentence is, and it needs to be done.
Yep.
That there needs to be an improvement in student achievement. RTI is unquestionably a framework to be able to make that happen. And I think after doing 6 months really of surveying and analyzing and discussing how best to roll it out, we have rolled it out in a way that is very, very careful. I think it's very, very careful. What I've heard back, I've had the teachers do surveys, I have had the administrators do surveys to hear how's it going. I've sat with the teachers that have gone through the trainings and listened to what they have to say. And overwhelmingly, one of the things they have to say is, how do we put all of this data together? So that's how I look at inform, just inform. But I don't disagree. It's a major undertaking. I think we've laid it out in a pretty thoughtful way, and that doesn't mean that I'm not nervous about, making sure that all the pieces are together. It need courage, Dr. Sylvia. But I do think that we have gone through a process of being very careful and putting it together in a way that is extremely cautious. And as needs have come up, and I will give you one quick example, we have an RTI coach that through Teachers 21, that we had sort of a pace of when that person would be there. We had some 3rd grade teachers that say, gee, I'm really struggling with this. I found a way through some carryover grant monies to be able to increase a little bit of her time, because I wanted them to know that we were responding to what they were saying they needed more assistance in. So I am paying attention to it, and I think that we're moving along.
Thank you. Committee, all set? Anna?
No, I think it's...
I'm sorry, did I?
Yes. The bus...
we
the
have
bus
to?
lease bid. And now for something non-controversial. The morning of town meeting, we opened our bids for the bus lease. We were led to believe that there would be an article that would allow us to lease 7 vehicles. The low bid came in at $10,345.51 per vehicle, which comes out to 7 buses to lease them for a year would be $72,418.57. The total over 3 years for those 7 vehicles would be $217,255.71. Now, we would not own them at that point. That is just for us to use them to lease for the 3 years. My motion tonight is not to award this, but to ask you to add 60 days. What I'd like to do is write a letter to the 3 vendors and ask them to hold their prices for 60 days, because I have been led to believe that the money will become available within that time for us to lease the 7 vehicles. And if the money does not become available, we will have that money available to us in the revolving account. So when I come back in 60 days or before that, it will be to award the lease one way or another.
Before I accept a motion, I want to understand your understanding of why the money will become available.
My understanding is that they will be asking to have a special town meeting.
So for this money to be available, A, there will have to be a special town meeting. B, the money will have to have been found, presumably through free cash or something like that. And C, the town will have had to have approved it at the special town meeting. So there are 3 contingencies necessary for this to take place.
Right. I'm just asking at this point for an extension of the bid of 60 days.
I'll take a motion for approval for discussion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay. Any discussion? Yes.
To the superintendent, through you, Mr. Chairs, how is this tied into what we discussed earlier with the proposed study committee?
It is actually, in order for this warrant to be put on a special town meeting, the board that said as part of their amendments that nothing would be bought without a solution will have to rescind that vote.
Why would they
I cannot speak for another board. I can only tell you what another administrator told me.
Kenny, you all set?
So, without the approval of this committee for the 60-day extension, where does that leave you?
Then I have to send out letters to the 3 vendors telling them that we're not awarding the bid because I don't have money.
And we're assuming that money might be there. There's no guarantee.
There's no guarantee. But this is common practice when something happens financially within a town that a vendor is asked to hold. The belief is that they have the vehicles, they want to sell the vehicles or rent the vehicles, and so that they will hold them for us. Or they'll say no, but I have to ask them.
All set.
Good.
Well, correct me if I'm not wrong, there's a third option.
What is the third option?
Use the revolver.
I don't have that much cash
Okay.
in that at this
So
time.
it's not an option. Okay. But if we were to use a revolver, I mean, we can do whatever we want with a revolver, is that correct?
And that's why I said in 60 days, we may have the third option may become available.
Okay.
Rhonda?
I think that all this is doing is extending the bid process and extending the decision on whether we buy new buses or whether we get new buses in or not. So, I mean, I'm not happy about the latter part of that because it's delaying us 60 more days from buying buses that we need right now. But it's what needs to be done right now. So, I mean, I would support it. What I want to make sure of as we continue to have these discussions, and this is just my opinion, is that I don't want us to have an us versus them attitude. And again, this is just me speaking personally, because I feel that over the last year, that's exactly what's delayed any decision on what to do with the buses. And I think that what I'm going to promise this board is that I do want to keep coming up with ideas on how we can move forward the
the immediate purchase of buses as we're working out, again, like I said before, the long-term vision. But I feel over this past year that it has been I can't wait for, the next Board of Selectmen meeting, that I do feel it's going to be an us versus them and back and forth. And I would really like to try to not make it an us versus them. This is a town problem, and coming up with solutions on how to move us forward is what I'd like us to concentrate on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Here's why I don't view it as an us versus them, because, in fact, by passing this motion, all we're really doing is support an initiative by the town administrator. And if we were to not pass this motion, the hand that he has reached out to meet our need in the most expeditious way possible, because absent that hand, I think we don't have the money until the revolver generates sufficient amounts. So I think it's, in fact, it's a positive step for us to pass this motion in terms of accepting that hand, and therefore I think it would be a mistake not to pass this motion. I'm also going to be optimistic and say that the amendment to the motion that was made by the Board of Selectmen, I can only assume was made in the context that they believed that this study was going to in fact take place, and that it would be done starting in January and completed by March, which was the original time frame, so that we could act upon it at the April town meeting. I have to believe that if the study is not possible, they may in fact decide that it makes sense to rescind that motion and to support their town administrator. So for that reason, I intend to support this motion, and unless there's more questions or discussion, we can move ahead with a vote on the motion. Anybody have any other thoughts they'd like to share? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed?
Aye.
And there were no abstentions, so the vote is 3-1-0. Thank you. Is anything else on the school buses?
No, sir.
Thank you. Anna, now you're on.
As Dr. Sylvia
No,
has
please.
said.
The chair does not allow you to make a comment that is made at every meeting.
I haven't said a single word.
No, I was talking to the superintendent, Dr. Sylvia. Okay.
Just read my thoughts.
Would you like us to move on and come back? Yes, that we can do that. Yes.
Flexibility.
We're going to move on. We'll save budget transfer requests unless the superintendent wants to take that, and move on to enrollment class size reports.
Yeah, that would be fine.
That works?
Once I find it, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Barry, I don't see that. Okay, I have too much paper. I should have brought my laptop with it on it. Maybe this is it, yes. Okay, in your package, I believe you have a document that is a chart, and it has across the top of it system, DECUS, and then Hammond/Minot. And you can see that it lists the class size of individual classes, it adds them up as a subtotal, and then it gives you the average. So when we're looking at kindergarten, the average is larger at DECUS with 22 students per class and 18.5 looking at the Hammond/Minot building. If we then go through each of the grades, you'll see we have in first grade, for instance, the average at both schools, one is 21.6, the other one is 21.4. We go to second grade, and we have 20.3 and 20.8. We go to third grade, and we have 21.6 or 21.2. So through the first 3 grades, we have parity on both sides of town. If we then move into grade 4, there is a smaller class size at the Deaconess with 19.7, and at Minot we have 21.6, and in 5th grade we have 22 students is the average for Deaconess, and we have 20.6 at Minot, a little bit lower at Minot. So it goes back and forth depending where they put the 6th class, if they needed a 6th class or if they went with 5. And when we look at the totals without kindergarten, without counting kindergarten, the average at Deaconess is 20.9 students per class, and at Minot it is 21 students. So we do have parity. And then when you look at the total number of students in both buildings, again, without the K, I believe, no, with K, or is that the bottom
Without
number,
K.
Michelle? The 696 and
Without
the
K.
677.
Oh, everybody.
That's everybody, okay. So the 2 schools, if you take the 2 buildings in one side of town and the 1 building on the other side of town, are pretty close. Today we heard about middle school.
Quick question.
Yep.
They are very close. My question is, do you consider the capacities at the two locations to be essentially the same?
No, Deaconess is a little bit bigger building than Minot. Deaconess has 6 portable classrooms, Minot has 4. Deaconess is just a little bit bigger building.
But not a lot. In other words, to me what's more important is percentage utilization rather than comparability of size. Comparability of class size obviously is important, but comparability of total number of students is not important.
Every space is used in both buildings.
Okay.
Neither one of those buildings were designed for 700 kids.
That is correct.
Yeah, right. Obviously with modulars, they clearly were not. Right. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so if we then move on to the right column, I'd like to look at the middle school where it says 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. You can see that we have 226 students in grade 6, 235 in grade 7, 233 in grade 8, for a total of 694 students in this building. And at one point we had 960 middle school students in this building. And then we have the co-op, and it shows that we have 100 students, and it shows how they are distributed. There are 3 7th graders, 7 8th graders, 9 9th graders, and it grows as the students get older until we have a total of 100. And that's with, basically there's 2 sessions there, I believe, with AM and PM. Then we look at the high school where we have 744 students. Mr. Chair, there's a question on my right.
I'm sorry?
Question.
Yes.
When was that, you said at one point there was 900, when was that difference of 300 students? Is there a time frame on that? Are we talking?
It was when I was here as principal.
Okay, so we're talking
about, I've been in central office for 8 years.
5 years ago, maybe?
No, I've been in central office for 8 years. So it was at least 9 years ago. And perhaps, I believe it was as we were building this building, so somewhere, but when we started the building project, it was 2002. So it was either 2001 or 2002.
So we've had a steady decline, is that?
That is correct.
Thank you.
We then go to I'd like to point out to you, if you go to the back of your sheet, please, and we look at the middle school, what was done is we looked at the number of teachers per department. So there are 9 English teachers. The average class size is 23. Michelle took the classes and then added them up, divided them, and came up with the average. Math, 23. Science, 24. Unified Arts, 24. And the humanities were at 24. Now, when you have an average, you know that sometimes you have some groups that are at 26, 27. You may have another one at 23, depending on pull-out classes and the like. And art, music, and health. Health, and because that's so large, because that counts 2 classes in a gym at once, and that's why it's 57 students. One teacher is not responsible for 57 children. If we then look at the high school, and using the same analysis, the number of teachers plus the number of children in each one of the classes, you added them up and divided, and you can see that our class sizes are smaller. And in a deeper look, you might be able to find that, for instance, some class at the high school, you could have a French 3 and 4 maybe in the same class, which would show differently. But the class sizes go from anywhere at 15 for math up to 21 for phys ed, with a 17.375 for its class. The class sizes, as you can see, are reasonable. That's not to say that we wouldn't like them smaller, but we have tried to keep them at the elementary schools particularly below a certain number and have been successful so far. Any questions?
Cliff? I still think that we need to re-examine some of these numbers because I just think that there is, we're always juggling, and we have to look at the best use of our resources, our personal resources. But the one thing that I would like to see, and it was presented to us like this in the past, I don't know why it's not presented to us like this now, is we used to get the middle school and high school report by class size, by subjects. I really, this doesn't really tell me anything. So we used to get the report by individual classes to see how many students were in each class, and I would still like to see that.
We'll make that available to you.
Rhonda?
I'd also like to see a year-over-year comparison in the report, so taking a look at the past 5 years and the trending, if at all possible. Just going.
We'll see if we have it.
Okay. And then the second thing is, on the first page, you do have the number of students that are out of district special ed, and then also homeschooled.
Yep.
And I know that you have the data because you survey them, but the number of students that are not special ed but go out of district to another school, or to a charter school, or to...
That's a different report that we do for January.
Comes out on January 1st? Okay, but even last year's numbers, if we can put an asterisk and say that, this is based on last year's numbers, but it'd just be nice to know the percentage over the last 5 years, if we can do it,
I think it would be better to wait on that particular number until we have our January number, and then we can show you 5 years of those that are Wareham children who have gone to other, I think that's what you're asking for, like private schools and charter schools and
I'd like to know
things
the
like
trend over the last 5 years. Is that number going up or down?
I would say it's going up.
Jessica?
I want to see that.
I would just like to note for the high school that I think you'd get a more accurate figure if you did what he said and you found the average of the actual sizes, not just counted up all the students and divided it by the number of teachers. I think you'd find a more accurate figure.
We did look at individual class numbers. We went through that list, and if there was 19 in this class and 22 in that class and 13 in that class, we then added them and we got the average.
Because I've just noticed a drastic difference in certain classes.
Yep.
I'm, as you know, prone to getting to 50,000 feet. And I'm thinking about the budget season to come. The state of Massachusetts, we know from the data, has consistently, whenever they had a financial problem, went where the money is and laid off teachers. It's both the easiest thing to do and the hardest thing to do. My problem is that I don't know whether it's the right thing to do. And by that I mean, at what point do you are our chief education officer as well as our chief executive officer, at what point does it make sense to do it, or at what point is it the wrong thing to do? And until we know that answer, it seems to me we're in an extremely difficult position to make budgetary decisions. And I'm asking that question because I'm looking at the potential for one of the worst budget seasons ever for the school committee, and I think we need to know the answer to that question. In other words, is an elementary school a class that's larger than X? I don't know whether that's 20 or 22 or whatever that number is that simply unacceptable, and we can't expect progress to be made when those class sizes exist, and therefore we should do something else besides laying off a teacher. And that number is different at middle school and different at high school. It seems to me we need something more concrete in order to make the very difficult decisions that I think we're going to be asked to make. Does that make sense?
I would say to you that it's too early for me to give you that kind of an answer.
And I didn't want it tonight.
Because we need to crunch the numbers first.
No, but I don't want you to crunch the numbers. Because that's not the way I want to do it. You see what I'm saying? I want to say
I would not come to you with a recommendation that I didn't think was educationally sound. If you looked at the research, there is no numbers on this front of this sheet that does not say that we have optimum numbers for classroom instruction.
I believe that. That's not the question. We know in the South Coast, just even in the South Coast, there are dramatically higher class sizes.
That is correct.
Okay. Are you suggesting that that superintendent of that particular district presented a budget with those class sizes and says that's educationally unsound and we shouldn't do it?
I'll give you a truthful answer.
Please.
The truthful answer is that we need to be able to open school and educate our children with the budget we are provided, so that if the town and committees do not support a higher budget, then we have to live within our means. So what I take out of tonight is, if we don't want any more cuts, then we need to fund our educational system more fully rather than asking us to continue to cut, particularly when other departments are growing in this town.
We still have two people here from public participation, and I greatly respect the fact that you stayed with us. And at least one, if not both, are teachers.
Both.
Both are teachers, okay. A decision was made that it was in the best interest of children that impacted the middle school. Okay? I'm not sitting here questioning that. What I'm What I want to know is, and not tonight, okay, what I want to know is, we're never going to have, especially for 2013, we're never going to have all the resources that we need to do what we'd like to do. That's a given. So when we're making these decisions, we may be faced with the same kind of decision we faced last year that brought all these people out tonight.
I think it's too early to say that.
Well, you're an optimist.
I am.
Wow. Okay, I hope you're right. But I'd still like for us to think about that issue of what is the maximum class size that a teacher should be asked to teach, and after that, we should just find a way to cut something else.
It's all relative.
What'd you say, Cliff?
It's relative, though.
Relative
It's
to
not-
what?
It's because it's not the same yardstick for each curriculum area.
Look, on this committee, we have said time and time again that the results aren't good enough, right?
Right.
If they're not good enough, and we know that we're putting teachers in a position where they can't achieve the educational results,
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
then we're by definition supporting something that is not going to result in improvement, which we say must occur. And that to me is unacceptable. So it may be that the whole situation is unacceptable, but there's nothing more fundamental than how many kids we ask a teacher to educate at one time, especially when the disparity in elementary school between the skill levels can be enormous.
This is a much larger conversation.
Which is why I'll stop and we can move on.
Let me just make
But
one
I wanted
point.
to plant a seed.
All right, and I'll plant one back. That it is a very complex situation when you're trying to analyze what the factors are that maximize the education of a child in a classroom. And I don't think you can underplay the importance of the instruction by the instructor, no matter which number of children are in that classroom.
Fair point, and I agree completely. Cliff?
Another point.
I know you want to move on, and I wasn't going to say anything, but the thing that you have to keep in mind is it's just not about class size numbers. I'll give you a perfect example, and it's just my own bias, and everyone here that knows that we had some discussions about it, and I was very lukewarm on it, and I probably still am. But in terms of it does have an effect on class size, and again, it's another subject for another day. But I just want to plant this seed. We got a new schedule at the high school. We got a flip-flop A/B block schedule, right? Which I was very, very lukewarm for. I'm much more in favor of the Copernican model. But be that as it may, what it did is it increased the class load of teachers with two things in mind. One, providing more opportunities for the kids, and two, reducing class size. So even though you may see some class sizes at the high school that may look like they're small, keep in mind, I happen to know a teacher that's got about 170 kids. Now, you went to the workshops. You know that one of the best levels of success in mathematics is writing. Well, I venture to guess that if you've got 170 kids every week, that's going to compromise any writing that you do of any substantial nature. So we've got to take the bad with the good. So there are all kinds of influences that influence class size that are deeper than just looking at it superficially.
Which gets to your point and Jessica's point, which is averages can
Right.
be deceptive. We understand that. Okay. Can we move on? Okay. Thank you. Anna, you ready to go?
The statistics that you have and you received in your report, all these balances are as of November 8th. And it occurred to me that whether or not the committee was aware that in order to get the report to Michelle by Thursday, the figures have to be run by Tuesday in order to then do the analysis. So, because since these figures, there's more spending. And I'm going to point out areas where we have as we go through it. Would the committee like me to just sort of summarize and keep going? Do you want to ask?
In
Or would
fact,
you like to do
the
this,
answer is
Jeff?
yes, but I'd like a motion to go beyond 10 o'clock. I don't think we're going to need to go far beyond 10 o'clock, thankfully, but we are approaching that hour. So could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Anna, just summarize.
Okay. In the 1000 series under administration, you're always going to see business finance, that percentage off because we established a new account with $11,000 in order to pay our audit requirements that we need, and also some other financial expenses that we were paying out of superintendent's contracted services when it was more appropriate. We saw that when we filed our end-of-year report, that those expenses should be filed as a finance expense. So that's that variance, and that's going to be there for the remainder of the year. Other than that, I mean, we're looking at, I don't have any issues with any of these other accounts or any concerns. So, instructional leadership, in order to summarize, we're looking at having 0.46% less right now in that instructional leadership categories than we did last year. You see a big variance with the department heads and curriculum instructional leaders, mainly because of all the reorganization. In FY11, you were looking at 10 positions, and now in FY12, you're really looking at 11 and then 4.5. Which means 11. So that's why that variance is there for the department heads and instructional leaders. In teaching and other teaching services, feeling very good. I tend to really look at that classroom specialist line as really the heart of this budget. So looking at that, I'm actually feeling very good.
Actually, the whole report seemed to
And
suggest
I'd like
we've
to
got some
point
wiggle
out
room.
that we have expended less in substitute coverage, and this is the account that for, sick days and personal days. So, as you can see, we do have less. No concerns here with guidance and psych assessment. Really isn't much of a variance to be concerned about at all. Other student services, again, small margin, 3.98%, and mainly the athletic account. I know it's because we've actually had more activity, paying things in more timely than, let's say, things might have been paid at this period last year. So, and also, when we get to the revolving account, the revenues are looking good. I know we've had an increase in gate receipts this year over last year, for sure. Now, professional development, the only concern I have is in what we've planned. We haven't really planned a lot. I mean, you're looking at maybe $9,000 for professional development substitutes. We've already exceeded, we've already in deficit by $1,400. So I know, moving forward, we really need to put more into, because of the level of professional development, all the training. There's really a tremendous amount of training that's going on at all levels. So that, I know that's an adjustment we really should be looking to make. Operations and maintenance. Okay, I have one huge concern, utilities. Did an analysis. Right now, it's between our electric cost. We have a bid for the supply portion of the contract, and that is doing very well. You know, right now, where we bid is much less than actual market. The delivery portion is NSTAR. And traditionally, pattern, maybe you see a 3% increase. But if I go back 5 years, maybe 3%. This is huge. This is more, I think what we're seeing is probably more like a 7 to 8% increase. We have paid out NSTAR almost $27,000 more in electrical usage than the same period last year. So I know that's definitely taken an effect on our utility account.
This is just electricity?
And water district charges. Our water has definitely, water sewer charges for the schools have really, that's also increased. I mean, that, you know, everything else, utility-wise, has not.
This is really mostly 2 months of activity? I know it's starting July 1, but
July 1.
But most of the activity has been September, October, right?
But no, July, summer schools,
well,
air conditioning, I saw higher.
But that's not every school.
But in the big schools where we house high school and middle school, and also at Minot, and in the specialized programs, you know, we have children that are medically fragile. They need to be in air-conditioned environments.
So you're saying that after 4 months, then, after a third of the year, okay,
yeah,
we have used 5% more. So we're looking at a theoretical 15% problem by the end of the year?
It continues.
And
the
do you
rates
understand
don't
what
change.
Do you understand what's happening? In other words, you've got the numbers, but why is it happening?
Well, increased costs, and organizations are at their mercy to do that.
I'm distinguishing between increased number of kilowatt hours versus the cost per kilowatt hour. Which is it?
This is cost per kilowatt hour has increased on the delivery portion of our electric bill.
If Ken had enough power to control the cost, then he wouldn't.
I know
be
he would. He would if he could. It's just unusual right now. We're just seeing, and a lot of us are wondering why. Why is this?
Yeah, what is the cost per kilowatt hour today compared to what it was a year ago?
Oh, I can't tell you the exact number. I have that written down in my office. I can get that to you, Jeff.
Please.
I mean, you can look at it, and it's. I have some concerns, yeah, because
I understand.
It really is seeing
keep going.
much more.
We'll just turn off the lights.
I think it's more consumption instead of cost, because
well, that's why I asked.
There hasn't been any significant. Matter of fact, they've had a freeze. There hasn't been any increase in the rate in the kilowatt. When you get to a certain level, it kicks in the next rate. So my guess is it would be a consumption.
But that's the opposite of what Anna's saying.
Well, I don't think it's all.
I wouldn't.
I can compare the
We don't need it as an agenda item, but if you could just send a quick
and
note to the committee to tell us which part of it is, and if it is consumption, then maybe you could send it to the principals and ask them to turn off some lights.
When we had an energy manager position, we saw that we had a better control.
Scott would be
I know
happy to
that
hear
the head custodians really, believe me, they lights on, they're constantly shut. I think we've gotten a little lax. In my meetings and when I visit schools, I try to impress upon people, every dollar that we save on those kind of costs translates into dollars that we can put, into the classroom.
Let's verify before we criticize, though.
Yeah. Okay. So, no other concerns, really just that utility. Insurance and special ed, you'll see a huge variance in tuition payments, but that is only because this year Bob has actually encumbered a great deal of the tuition, encumbered the funds, basically. These funds are encumbered, and that's why you see the huge difference.
So they appear to be spent, but they're just encumbered.
They're encumbered.
We just encumbered earlier.
I understand.
Much earlier than you normally do. So we see that variance there.
Bob, do you have any reason for optimism with regard to the budget as a whole?
I think at this point, we're stable in terms of placements. Tomorrow's another day. You know, the volatile ones. Otherwise, I think that we're in good shape. But barring the unforeseen, I think that we're in good shape.
Okay. Go ahead, Anna.
Okay, so in summary, right now you're looking at a 4.09% difference less right now remaining in our accounts that we had the same period last year. I know some at 1.73% is the tuition payment. We're going to get into the non-net. Non-net right now is a 4.33% difference. You're looking right now at what we're spending. I ran some reports just so that, I'm seeing that for just repairs, the accounts that transportation would use to do repairs, in FY11, we had expended $118,000 by this time this year. Right now, we've expended $133,000, almost $14,000 more we have spent out of the transportation budget for repair vehicles and, parts and everything that goes along with maintaining the vehicles. The other portion, the salaries and other, right now there's really only a $10,000 different variance.
4% is about $1 million. It's a little over $1 million.
Yeah.
So reconcile that number. Some piece of it is
half,
the encumbered piece.
$470,000 is tuition payment. $470,000 tuition payment.
So that's about half of it.
That's about half, and then the rest is sort of spread across all different accounts. 14. You're actually looking at $24,000 in transportation alone. If you look at all the accounts, there's that. Utilities. Look at the difference there. And little, it's really right across the board. And sometimes it's like balancing out. We've got accounts that are doing much healthier than, and other accounts, that aren't, at the end. But I am going to very, very closely monitor this. I think we would be prudent that by the second quarter to just, hold off, do salary projections, all the contract projections for the remaining 2 quarters of the year, and then make a decision as to whether or not we may need to freeze some accounts to cover if our utility costs continue at the rate that they are. Yeah. So we may have to do that. So by the end of the year, end of second quarter, I'll start working on doing salary projections over the course of the full year.
Okay.
Okay. I added revolving accounts. I wanted to give you another lens. I know the report that you receive, this report, that basically tells you from month to month in the current year. But I also look at prior years also with revolvers. So I've given you that information on the second attachment that I sent to you. For example, in a transportation revolving account, previous balance at this period of the year, $10,000 versus $7,000 now. Athletics, the $41,000, it's because we have had increased gate receipts. Adult ed is about the same. Full day kindergarten, you see the huge variance because we still we haven't actually physically received our 89? No, not in hand. We don't have it to use yet. No, we don't have it to use. We just got the notice. Yes, it has to be transferred and all that before we can start drawing on it and, accounts. So we haven't. So we've been charging the revolver for the grant portion of what we are paying. Currently, you're looking at least, 4 teacher salaries? 10 part-time paras. being paid out of the revolving account for the kindergarten program, and 8 teachers. And the 8 teachers, their funding is like a third of the salary in the LEA, a third of the salary is going to get covered by the grant, and then a third of the salary would then be covered by the revolving account. So that's really the reason for that variance at this point. What we'll have to do now, once we actually have the money and we can actually, then we'll have to do transfers. We'll have to charge back the cost that we've charged to the revolver to actually, and then spend the grant money.
Anna, help me
for
reconcile
salaries.
the traditional revolving report says that the transportation revolver had nothing in it as of June 29th, which didn't surprise us.
Yeah,
And then as of the end of September, had almost 22,000. That's saying previous balance 10,000. For what month was that? And the current balance is 7,300.
To date, last year, this period, that previous balance is, think about, it's almost the same sort of methodology that we're looking at when we look at the LEA. Yes, same period last year.
And the current balance is as of what date?
This would be, tell you, November 8th. I ran
Okay,
this.
so we had, at the end of September, we had almost 22,000 in the transportation revolver, and now on November 8th, we have 7,300. Why?
We've had to use for some repairs.
For what kind of repairs?
Repairs to vehicles. I mean, we use the
Did you say
revolver to
summer?
buy, no,
Some repairs.
Some repairs. So some of the repairs costs are also being paid for by the revolving account. And then like the athletic, for example, all the any driver salaries for all the athletic runs that we do come out of the revolver. Now, they're still billing, and then athletics will then have to pay it. Athletics has not paid. We don't have that in there. Just recently, I mean, it can really fluctuate. We have $16,000 from Makepeace. It just has not been credited, we just received it, so that's gonna then, I mean, next week, this revolving account's gonna be probably this amount plus 16,000. But then you're also spending out of it.
I'm just not clear as to when you take money out of the revolver and when you take money out of the operating budget. How do you make that decision?
It's just the methodology that's always been used in this district by
but what
every
is the methodology?
transportation manager. For example, the LEA accounts, you pay all the school time expenses. Driver salaries from school to home, from home to school. Now, in the revolving account, the driver salaries that you're paying could be from field trips. Like, we don't pay the, salaries of drivers.
All right,
field trips, athletic runs.
I'm just trying to understand the methodology. Am I correct in saying you take money out when you expect it to be reimbursed?
Yes.
Okay, so any non-reimbursable activity, you take it out of the non-net budget. Reimbursable activity, you take it out of the revolver.
But that's not the case when there's repairs. You're not going to be reimbursed for the repairs that have been taken out of the revolver.
Exactly.
So why do you then?
Because at the time, Mr. Tatro makes that decision. It could be that was probably a repair on the athletic run bus. So in his mind, okay, then I pay for that repair out of the athletic.
I'm sorry, that doesn't. I mean, I can accept a methodology the way I described, and the superintendent agreed with my description. But it seems to me we need to carry that methodology through in a disciplined way. And if we've got a repairs to a bus that maybe it's used for athletic runs, that's not the point. The vast majority of the time, it's used for regular activities involving the LEA. I think we should stick with that methodology, pure and simple. And I see the superintendent agrees with me. So we can make corrections retroactively, just journal entries, although that's a pejorative term these days. But you see what I'm getting at? Let's stick with that methodology.
I can work with Mr. Tatro on that.
Please.
Yeah, just to make it clear to do. But I mean, for as long as I've been in this chair, and
I
would even say probably.
But let's have some discipline
that's how
with respect to the
paid the
accounting.
bills. Yeah,
okay.
But
thank
we
you.
could definitely
Go
do
ahead.
that. Okay. So again, our insurance account includes currently a $10,000 insurance payment that we received, reimbursement for that Be Safe program, but those are expenses that I'm going to end up spending to purchase Knox boxes for the schools and to continue, you know, to progress our security planning and all of that. So you're really looking at around $5,000 that's in there. School choice this year is paying for 3 teacher salaries and 1 para out of the co-op. Last year it was only 2. West Academy this year is supporting 1 full teacher salary and a 0.5 teacher that they share with the co-op for, I believe it's for PE. I think it's PE. Yeah, the PE teacher, so that comes out of both of the budgets. And they're healthy.
Any other questions from the committee? You've got some budget transfers you'd like to talk about?
1. I have a recommendation for the following appropriation budget transfer of $63,720 in order to pay nursing contracted services for an out-of-district student placement. This is a cost that we had even last year, but the private institution had factored that cost into their billing. So it was appropriate to pay it strictly out of that $9,300 account because it was all part of the tuition costs. This year, I believe Bob is really contracted, trying to save some money because it was a very expensive component of that particular placement. So because we were contracting directly, we actually needed to create this new account because it has to actually indicate the $3,200 as a medical expense. It's a medical expense for as far as end-of-year report and as far as DESI's concerned, if we pay that service directly. So I'm asking out-of-sped tuition where this cost would have been paid for previously if the vendor were paying for it, into this new account, System Out-of-District Medical Contract Services, brand new.
You need a motion for that?
You should make a motion.
Yes.
To approve the...
Could I have a motion, please?
It's moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 4-0-0. Anything else, Anna?
Nope, that's it.
Everybody else set with Anna?
Thank you,
Okay,
Anna.
school calendar. Thank you, Anna.
Okay, school calendar, we are here to ask you to make a change. And the change comes about on January 13th. In the previous calendar, that was an early dismissal day. We'd like to make that a staff in-service day so that we front-load some staff development and take the early release day that was a full in-service day on March 6th and now make that an early release day. So we are changing those 2 dates. Just one of them is the early release and one of them was the in-service. We've just changed those 2 dates. Michelle, was there any other changes to this? It's on the attachment. Thank you. June 6th, early release moved to May 24th because of the science MCAS. So we didn't, when we made the calendar, we did not have that science exam, or we missed it. And there's a science MCAS on that date. So that's why we're asking to move that early release to May 24th. I've already talked about the January 13th and the March 6th. And what this does, I'll just give you the cost, so to speak, is that we had factored in a in-service day on an election. It's the March state primary. Now that will be an early release day, and today I met with the town administrator, and he said he would call the chief of police for me to make sure we have an extra police officer. There'll be 2 police officers at the buildings that have polling stations, so that we have somebody out in the parking lot in the morning when parents are dropping off and when they are coming back to pick children up, because it's an early release day, which will be around noon at the elementary schools.
So a portion of the day during the polling, the students will be there.
That's correct. And but it is the traffic concerns that we have, as much as anything else, that we are taking care of. I did talk with the town administrator about the possibility of changing the April town meeting in future years to a Saturday. He was going to do some research to find out what we needed to do legally in order to be able to do that.
And
but this year in the calendar, we have the day off for elections to allow that to happen without, having that safety issue.
And you're all set with the town clerk?
The town clerk was not able to come to the meeting, but Mr. Andrews and I held the meeting successfully.
Okay.
Yes,
So what you're saying is...
And one other person forgot to come to the meeting.
No, I got a message that it said it was canceled from your office.
So, we all got...
computer's doing things without me.
We all got emails from the town clerk, and what you're saying is that situation has been resolved, is that correct?
That is correct. I spoke to the town administrator about the email that was given, that I did not appreciate it, that I'm right next door and would have appreciated just to sit down. But we are doing as we said we would do when Mr. Fonce and I met with the town clerk. We have made the movement in our calendar to allow the town to save some money by moving back to the schools for elections.
Anything on the school calendar?
What's that say?
Okay, we need a motion for this.
So moved.
Second? Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just one thing.
Yes.
How is the communication of this going to be handled with parents?
And
and are there going to be multiple communication around the changes?
As it always is, the day before one of these events, there is a Global Connect call. It will be in the newsletters that are sent home to parents, and it will be posted in the schools.
Okay. Well, just because I think that one of the changes, there could be plans that are made on Martin Luther King weekend, and that is now moved from an early release to a full day. I think getting the communication out sooner than later, especially for that change, might help parents, with their vacation planning for that weekend.
Maybe we could avail the press into a public service announcement for us.
Yes, I'm sure we can.
Hi, Jamie.
That's a very good point. I hadn't seen that now that is a 4-day weekend for some.
Yes. I have them all in my calendar.
But since most of us attend the Martin Luther King
any of them.
breakfast,
I have to look at daycare for each
it's a work day.
Yeah.
We all set?
Yep.
So do we have to vote on this?
Yes.
I
There's a
move
motion made and seconded. That was discussion. Any other discussion? No. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hey.
Opposed? Abstained? 400.
Motion to adjourn.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn unless somebody has new business.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Harry from Michelle Ruiz.